Thank you. Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Warrant Committee. We have our Karen Bosworth is here. Karen, can you please take our roll? We have a quorum.
I can. Tom Caldwell is here. Steve Rhines. Lori Connolly. Elizabeth Dillon. Jay Fundling. Allison Gagnon. We do not have Julie Joyce. We have Andrew Coe. Macy Lee. Julia Maxwell is on Zoom. Peter Mon is here. Brian McGuire is here. Aman Nagasi is on Zoom. And Judy Steele is on Zoom. You have a quorum.
A quorum. Thank you very much. So we'll get started. So everyone, just initially, I'd like to thank you all for being here tonight. I've been just trying to juggle some scheduling issues with various people. I'd like to come in to speak with you. And, we're just dealing with an issue with just the various rooms throughout town for the meeting. So my apologies for any confusion where we were meeting tonight. I'm glad you could all be here. We're hearing various things, I think, or I am anyway, just in terms of our plans moving forward for the budget and some other business that we have that the town's looking at. So tonight I kind of just put on the agenda just a general discussion concerning fiscal year, next year's budget. And just wanted to kind of talk about it. I sent everybody a slew of materials. It was a lot of information. There was no expectation on my part that obviously you'd be ready. I would have indicated that in my correspondence to you that, prep this and get ready. When that time comes, I'll be more direct and we'll talk about it at the meetings before. But this is kind of a real broad amount of information for us to all consume as we kind of move forward, meeting with the various departments and then presenting to the Warrant Committee for discussion, then obviously discussing with the various department or committee that we're addressing financial issues for. So in terms of outlook at this point, I know I've spoken to a few of you. We do not yet know the plans of the select board and others in terms of override. I think everyone here is aware that there is a school building project that's potentially going to be put before us as a committee, town meeting, and potentially the town. And that's why Sean O'Rourke, chair of the committee, will be here tonight to discuss that. But I'd like to kick it off. Sean is actually at the school building committee meeting now over at the high school. So as just kind of a first, figured we could fill some time and just maybe discuss some matters concerning the budget this year. And we do not have a copy of it. I've not been able to distribute that to you yet. But I can say I'm planning on having a couple of meetings next week. And the next week, we would have Nick Milano in on Monday and Amy Dexter to discuss their draft budget for the town. They would be available to answer questions. Again, kind of a preliminary look at what they're working towards. Nothing is certain, and any draft of anything we get will obviously be a working draft, but something for a starting point for us. I know that the departmental or the asks have been in, they've been submitted to the town administrator, so we'll be talking about that next week, and we're very fortunate to have schools come in on Wednesday, if we can find a room, come in on Wednesday and kind of detail all the work that they've been doing for us and for the town, leading up to not only planning their budget, but also, I'm sure at some point be weighing in on the school issue. So we're going to have I think a really good meeting hopefully on Wednesday, and I think a good outline for the potential town budget on Monday with Nick and Amy. So all that being said, does anybody have any questions just regards to kind of moving forward or things that they've been thinking about regards to the town budget, things they've heard, concerns? Anything? Okay. Just kind of ask a broad question. Did anyone have any success? I know one group did, meeting and potentially planning anything out for any department that you've been working on? Police, fire, government?
We haven't heard anything on the school budget side. I know they're meeting on the subcommittee, but I have yet to get any information from them on when they would like to meet with the Warrant, or if the Warrant would be, I mean, we attend the meetings, I attend, they went on Wednesday.
Okay.
But I would like to figure out with them kind of, because I know they're presenting, and usually we used to meet with them before they presented. So I find that a little off.
I think that you were just trying to get people in ahead of time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
but like usually we go through and like ask them like the questions that are important for kind of laying out the budget and like where they're spending. So, I mean, I'm sure they can do that, but we usually in the past,
Correct.
we have met with them for quite a few times before they've presented the budget.
Coming. Well, I can say that in speaking to the chair of the school committee, they obviously, this is early for them, I think.
Yeah, totally.
And
Which
very-
we'll take.
Well, exactly. And I think that was, given all that we're looking at, that's my goal is, and speaking with them, you know, like our general budget with the town administrator, like it's not done, we still have more work to do, but in speaking with them, and they were very receptive to that, obviously, they want to come in is, you know, they're going to give us kind of a peek
Okay.
at what their ultimate goal will be, what they're working towards, areas of focus and interests. So I'm happy that they're going to do that because I think it'll be
Yeah.
very strong for us when they, and you know, they're talking budget numbers maybe by December. Do you know?
I had only heard that they were pretty firm on their deficit and then what their amount was there,
Okay.
which was over 4. And I don't know if that includes, that's their needs base.
Okay.
So I'm curious to see what they are going to need and where their viewpoint is. I think Wednesday's subcommittee meeting in the morning will be a very informational.
Okay, and that's this Wednesday?
Yes.
Okay, great.
And it's at 8 a.m. And they're not recorded, so it's important to kind of, if you can go.
But we saved the transcript.
That's,
So, you know, like, and on that vein, you know, in speaking to Nick, and he may have shared this with us last time, but, you know, I'm sure he'll say it, this is very early, and, you know, really early in the budget process. So I'm excited, if budgets can get you excited, that we're actually getting some stuff now. You know, there is the potential for still a January meeting. That's obviously going to slow us up with our budgetary work, and then obviously the annual, where they'll, you know, we're gonna have a lot of questions. So that's good. I appreciate that, Allison. Thank you.
Yeah.
Anyone else? Judy?
I have my hand up.
Sure.
Okay. I have met with the cemetery,
Oh, thank you.
and they have already turned in their budget to Nick, and they don't anticipate any changes in that budget that they turned in. And they seem to be okay with same level budget from last year. They were able to secure a CPC funding for some work down at the cemetery. So they were very pleased with that. And it's already starting from what I heard there. So that's what I have on the cemetery. I will have more, I'm sure. I don't have the actual copy of the budget with me, but I can bring it to the next meeting or something and share it with everyone. But Nick does have it if anybody was interested in getting a copy.
Thank you, Judy. And Judy, other than the CPC funding, there were no other asks of the cemetery, no equipment or anything?
No, because I kept asking her that. I go, well, you were on level all this year and you're saying you can do it again. And she says, we can. It seems her crew down there is very, I don't know why I'm word searching, but I mean, they're really good at getting things done, you know, if they can work on fixing small equipment and keeping everything running, and yeah, she seems to be okay. And I kept saying, I said, well, ask for something. And she laughed and she goes, we're okay. So she should know. The cemetery has had additions down there. I don't know if anybody, walks down there, but they have put in a new section down by the Gun Hill Road side, and it's for cremations, and it's a lovely garden setting, unlike, it's not just rows of little, almost like you would see cluster mailboxes. She's designed the area, both garden-wise and placement of the receptacles for these cremation burials. And it's very peaceful, and the cemetery grounds are just lovely. And her crew is very dedicated to, keeping the cemetery in shape, really good shape. So I think that's a plus for her where she doesn't have, that's just my personal opinion, that's a plus for the cemetery in that very engaged staffing and pride in the cemetery. So that was my take on it.
Judy, thank you so much for all that information. Cemetery certainly is one of the jewels of the town, and I enjoy walking there myself. So thank you for that preliminary information about the cemetery. Anyone else want to share? Jay?
Yeah, so the General Government Subcommittee met last week. We met in the new conference room that's in the old firehouse, so that was exciting.
Report on that, Jay. How was that? How's the building look?
What'd you think?
Great, new. I mean, it's not, probably wouldn't be great for us, because the chairs, you think, well, you can put
Well, it's very...
tables
it's called
together and stuff.
It's called a training room. It's very,
Yeah.
Parallel tables all facing one. So you'd be standing at the front, Tom. We would all be like your students. So it certainly has the room for us.
Like a lectern.
Yeah, you could move it around,
Yeah.
so.
And the motion detector kept making the light turn off, and it was me, Brian, and Amon. So we kept making Amon get up and make the motion detector go off.
Yeah,
Newbie.
Of course, yeah, the rookie.
So yeah, it was me, Brian, and Amon. Andrew wasn't able to make it, and it was largely me going over what I've learned in the past 2 years. General government, it's, at least in my mind, it's not only the things listed as general government in the warrant, it's also sort of a catch-all for other things that don't fall into any other group. So I sort of went through all those and said what I knew about them, and we heard, okay, what is Amon interested in, what is Brian interested in, and I still owe everybody an email saying, I think this is how, we've got like 20 different items. I think this is how we're splitting up the different items. Andrew gets everything everybody didn't want, and
There's nothing boring in general government.
thanks. Yeah,
so, and try to group things like, okay, these three I'll flow through the town clerk, so we're gonna have one person do that, and I'll know, these I'll go through Nick, so when you wanna learn more, talk to Nick, and please talk to Amy, and it was mostly just us chatting with each other, and me bringing up to speed of what we knew.
That's great. Well, I appreciate that, and it's a huge undertaking. But thank you for that and just getting together. And I think hopefully get you those numbers, or if you don't already have them, you can start doing your digging. So thanks, Jay, and everybody. Anyone else? Okay.
I want to add something.
Please do.
We just wanted to mention that we were also splitting up roles because we were discussing like the different departments. So I was interested regarding like town clerk, reports, IT, veterans benefits. So if we're going to be going further into, specific roles, as you just mentioned about the budget.
Perfect. Okay. Ron, did you have your hand up?
I did. Can you guys hear me okay?
The floor is yours.
Okay, great, thanks. I believe I was assigned to the parks and then also the Board of Health. So when I spoke to the folks in the Parks Department, they said they were level funding, so they were comfortable with that. They didn't really have too many concerns, so I left it at that. On the Board of Health, They did say that they were planning to increase hours for one of their part-time nurses. And so they were looking at the budget coming in at about 465,951.
Wow.
And it was increased because they're trying to take the public health nurse from part-time to full-time. And they had a couple other small increases for training and some consultancy for, I think for some work around the septic systems. They needed to bring a consultant in, and I think that was planned to be $1,000. But they're looking at slight increases on their side.
Okay. Ron, did Parks mention, just to start with Parks, did they mention anything about the CPC field or anything at Andrews? Did they share anything about Guile, the field down at Guile Road, or was it just?
No, I didn't get into those level of details. I was going to meet, so I just talked to Bonnie,
Nice, okay.
the admin clerk for Parks, but I was going to schedule a time to talk to Kevin Chisholm, who's the director. I just haven't had time to catch him yet, but I was going to try and catch him maybe next couple weeks.
Oh, that's great, Ron. I appreciate that. Thank you, and thanks.
Yeah, and if anyone has any specific questions about, specific projects, I'm happy to take those to that department as well.
Yeah, Ron, I have a list of some stuff I'll probably mention at some point in the meeting.
Okay.
But I mean, I can right now. Why not? It's probably more relevant. But it was just the, there was a lot of talk about the ramp to Lower Guile Field and like the ADA accessibility issue. And I know, just anything just concerning the CPC and the Andrews project and the Lower Guile project, I guess. But I'm sure everybody has those questions.
Okay, yeah, I can plan to discuss those with Kevin when we get to meet in person.
Thanks so much, Ron.
Thank you.
What was the issue with Lower Guile? We're waiting for is it the DEP?
We had, didn't they have a problem? We funded it, but there are those people that were petitioning against it.
Yeah, but aren't we waiting for the governmental agency to
Yeah.
respond?
To weigh in.
Yeah, is that?
That's where they're at.
Okay.
Yeah,
I don't think they've made,
I don't know where that stands in terms of the approval
Right.
for that.
can we ask questions because like Flatley and the fields there and upkeeping of them, because
Yeah.
those need some major work.
Yeah, and I know from speaking to the chair of the CPC, they had mentioned Flatley
Yeah.
and work there.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
I'm just hoping it's in the budget for next,
Yeah.
that needs major work.
Yeah, so that's another good question, Ron, I guess.
And I'm also curious at when the .32 contract runs out, because that is up and where those kids are going for sports after that too. So I'm curious where we're at with that.
Okay.
We need more fields.
So,
Yeah, what I'll do is I'll ask the director for a list of their projects that they're planning to focus on.
Awesome.
And then I can see, I can get the status. And if there are specific questions, I assume we can dig into those.
Oh, great.
yeah, I know that the CPC was trying to get funds for Andrews to improve the lacrosse soccer field. So it'll be interesting to see how that's going. It seemed pretty certain, right?
Let's hope.
Well, we will see. Ron, thanks again. And I'm sure, in two members of the committee, if things come up, you're sitting at a ball field and you're like, why are these benches so messed up? Think about things think about things like that. I mean, honestly,
Yeah.
if you have the question, 10 other members of the town may have the exact same question.
My wife always mentions the lack of water fountains for runners
Oh, that's a good one.
at the park and for the kids at the parks.
Yeah, there's 0 water
They
stations.
used to have water fountains at all the parks.
Yeah, they used to Cunningham, yeah.
And there was COVID.
They don't.
took
They,
the- yeah,
none of them work. any of the ones that I've yet to see one in a town park that actually
Yeah,
works.
Kelly Field doesn't have any.
The
No.
CPC
That's right, in my
funded one
neighborhood.
that's going to be put in at Andrews Park. So there will be one water fountain in Andrews Park at least, which
Well,
is
there's
great.
more.
That is not
There's
going to
one.
be enough.
Yeah.
There's one.
Pass it
Very
along.
thankful for that one.
Yeah, no, that is very nice. And
But there's not one at Flatley, there's not one at Kelly.
Kelly,
There's none in Kelly, yeah.
like
There's
Mary C.
there's nowhere to
Lane.
go to the bathroom either.
No, they put up that porta potty
potty?
right by the hockey rink. But most of the people who use it are postal workers and UPS workers. I only see that because we take out dog across the street during lunch breaks. But yeah, that's the only. And they had another one right near, right on Brook towards that. They had another one there, I think this summer for the kids, a porta potty. Just when you're on Brook and, it's like that entrance, you walk around into the field, the soccer field. They had one there this summer.
We should be investing in
Yeah.
not porta potties.
Yeah,
That seems crazy.
yeah, they had a porta potty there.
Like-
It's gone now.
Bathroom facilities?
Yeah.
Ron, your job's getting tougher.
Yeah, sorry, we just added,
If you see
What's that building?
for water, sorry. Empty, you let me know.
and we just added.
I didn't even ask.
If you drink the water, you have to go to the bathroom.
Building right in Kelly, like near between the playgrounds. What is that building? That brick building. That's
Storage.
Is that storage? Okay. I always wonder what was in there.
It needs to.
There's a purple throne in there.
There's what?
A purple throne in there.
That's a great place for bathroom.
Yeah, they need to add them.
Anyway.
Like the work that Ron's going to be doing, but the conversation here. I mean, everyone
just
uses
curious,
our
yeah.
parks. We all go to them. We love
Totally.
them. Our
Yeah,
kids
yeah.
need them. So another big issue in the town.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I coach a couple of youth sports. I have to say that I've received compliments on the Milton's parks. I know.
Oh, the playgrounds?
Yeah, just the parks in general, just some of the athletic fields that people from other towns have commented
that's true.
to
Yep,
me.
that's true. Yeah.
That they think we do a very good job. I think Brooks looks really nice now. It's, but we can always improve.
No, it's true. The tennis courts they've improved those greatly.
Kelly, that little
Yeah, the
skating
Kelly.
was good. But flatly, I've yet to hear a compliment.
There's nothing there, right?
No,
just-
it's not like a destination versus like some of the other parks. Andrew, as they continue to improve it, if they do that funded, that'll be a great. The parking will that's the challenge there. But it's a great field area.
Parks that we have they've done a nice job of making them
That was a
nicer,
fundraise.
but the number of fields always a constraint. And
Oh yeah.
when I coached lacrosse, that was the biggest issue that we had.
Trying to find
And
some-
kids playing at Milton Soccer and Milton Healthcare was kind of disgusting with the amount of goose poo there. And so for a town our size with the amount of green space, it's always been shocking to me how little field space we have.
Their girls are practicing. My daughter's practicing in the baseball field without goals.
Yeah.
For soccer.
Yeah.
So
With no lights in the dark sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
so-
true because there's
It's
no lights
awful.
in the parks. Yeah.
Yeah, not to pound on this issue, but I do scheduling for a couple of the youth sports, and it's really hard.
Yeah.
Right?
totally.
I'm calling Canton.
Yeah. Is Houghton's
Braintree.
Pond part of our? It's part of Milton. Houghton's Pond.
The state park.
It's DCR.
Ah, okay. Okay.
So
We used to use it. I don't know
We
if
used
do
to
we.
use it. Yeah.
used to, yeah.
It is used for soccer and stuff.
Yeah.
By
Younger.
other people. I don't know if it's Milton.
Yeah, it
Town,
used to be
Milton,
the pre-K program that was used. That was
Yeah,
there.
that's when my kids went.
That was the only. They only used it for that. They didn't have games there.
No, yeah, for practice. I remember when my kids were little, they went to Houghton's.
There was talk. I don't know if this is accurate at all, but it's the warrant committee, so we'll. Were they talking about turfing Flatley?
I don't know.
No,
It was never. That wasn't. Okay. That was,
They,
It was.
They
okay.
Yep, and Andrews.
Okay.
Flatley needs it. It's a dirt pile of rocks. It's not flat, so it's anything but. But it's not cut. It's not maintained. It needs a lot. I don't know what the solution is, but I do think that we need to invest in some sort of more. The numbers are growing, and my neighbor runs the soccer program. The numbers have doubled, and I'm sure with every sport. So our town of our size should have more fields. This has been a constant thing. I wouldn't do it. I think overall, we need to invest more in our sports facilities. We were 2-time state baseball, and we had to fundraise for new fields for that too. So when we speak of expenses, I think that's something to consider if there's a space to put a field.
It's also a, sorry, just to go
No.
off of your point, because you're absolutely right. It's also an equity issue. So some kids aren't able to participate in the sports because there's limited space. And so if you're not lucky enough to be able to participate in one of the sports, sometimes they'll say, well, you can go to these private sort of other people running sports for more outside of town. And if your children can't have that opportunity, if you can't afford it, that's really limiting people's ability to get involved in sports. I think it's really important for kids to be able to do it. But our field space being limited is really problematic for that. I absolutely agree.
Liz, thanks. Town sports, I don't know how many, like, that's what it is, right?
I know.
You have club, you have all this, like, and they're great. But town sports, like Liz said, everyone an opportunity. Everyone, no matter what the level of skill, you know, it doesn't matter. Softball, baseball, lacrosse, hockey, flag football, everything else we offer. So thanks, Liz. It's a good point. Now, I know when we were discussing with Kevin last year, someone correct me if they remember, but there was a cost on that Andrews project, right? It was like $1 million plus. Does anybody remember that from last year? Kevin gave us the number, or it may have been the Community Preservation Committee. But they have to dig out, reloam, resod, sprinklers and stuff. And that was just natural grass. But I know that with the turf they were proposing there, it's in the hundreds of thousands for grass. But the turf project, I think, was over $1 million. I don't want to misstate. So it's a lot of money.
Yeah.
You know?
And we don't own, and the other thing to think about long term is, Belmont they're building a new hockey facility. We have numbers growing in the hockey, and we have that Euland's should be bought eventually down and rebuilt. I mean, it's dated, it's too small. There's no practice. Like, we have one, and we have that land there that gives us more opportunities to build off of. So we're wasting that. And we should be looking at that in the future, of buying that and rebuilding it. I mean, when we think of like long-term and investing back into everywhere, and we really need to think, and this goes into the next discussion of our presenter, but like spreading it out and thinking how much we can do long-term across Milton versus, because there's so many things. There is like things that need to be done, And so that's when we talk about equity for everything, we really need to talk about spreading that financially across and seeing how we can get the most bang for our buck.
Hey, Tom.
Ron?
Yeah. I think we're talking about great things, and I think everyone as a citizen would have interest in different things that we should improve and invest in. I mean, when I go back to talk to Kevin, we're going to talk about 1 year's budget. I think a lot of the topics that are being raised are going to be broader than that. And I think the more we talk to them, the better. And the more time we have, obviously, we can actually have input. But I think we're raising issues that are way beyond just this 1 year's budget review.
Yeah.
So maybe we should have Kevin come down. I'll ask him for a list of the current projects that he's planning to focus on. There'll be other projects, because obviously there could be things that require 3 years of investment. We can talk about that and maybe get a roadmap from him, because I'm sure he's going to be looking at the multi-year budgets and these investments that require more than 12 months. And maybe we can have that discussion. And I think at some point, some of these are probably decisions that I would think either if they're big investments about creating new fields, I don't know if that's just the Warrant Committee that makes those decisions. I would think that goes to the select board or town meeting, because that could be a huge investment that needs to be, decided by the town.
Certainly.
But baby steps. I will circle back with Kevin, the park director, and I'll share back what I find out. And then maybe we can invite him to come down at one of our next meetings.
That'd be great.
Oh, absolutely, Ron. Absolutely, and thank you for following up with him again. I know we have a lot of work to do in that area, and I appreciate the comments. Anybody else? Oh,
One question I had, Tom.
Sure.
So if he shares back a document with me and I forward it to the rest of the Warrant Committee, I just wasn't sure. Is there some protocol on documents that we share? I can't remember. With like public meeting and we need to disclose everything. I can't remember if there's some requirements on documentation going around by email.
Ryan, what usually I do is I'll get it from I'll either get it, Karen will get it, and what I do is then I just recirculate it to committee. So I would think in this situation, if I'm not distributing the budget from Nick or from Amy or from Town Hall, if you can just send it to Stephen and myself and Karen, and then we can distribute it.
Got it. Okay, perfect.
Mark.
Tom?
Judy.
I don't want to get off track. As Ron pointed out, we kind of spreading out a little bit here in our thoughts of how to spend money. But in regards to CPC money, it cannot be used for turf. And I know there's a lot of great thoughts out there about using that money to improve fields. And the only part of a turf that the CPC money cannot be used for, it can be used for the subgrading and the gravel, and it's the actual plastic grass. That's the only part that cannot be have CPC money. So in the grading for plastic grass, turf, is different than if you were to grade for a dirt field. So just be aware as everyone's thought processes go to the costs of the different types of fields and maybe being able to use CPC money, that it's prohibited. And a town did put in turf and they had to dig it up, which meant the sublayers as well, because that couldn't be used for, the sublayers are specific to putting plastic grass on top. That's all. I just wanted to send out that friendly reminder.
Oh, thank you, Judy. I recall that now. Appreciate it. Okay.
Are we waiting for Sean?
Yeah, frankly, we're just going to talk until Sean gets here. So this is, we've done this a few times, not often, but Liz.
I have another point. So I really liked what Ron said about having Kevin Chrism come down and talk to us. And I wonder if while we're thinking about it, if there are other departments, like we haven't had a chance to talk to the DPW yet, but I could see that they might also have multi-year projects. I know that there was some talk at one point about if the park department were going to have like a master plan, like a recreation plan. I wonder if that's a thing that they are doing. I'd be curious to hear from Kevin. I'd also be curious because we talk a lot, hear a lot in select board meetings or different meetings about, different traffic areas in town and how traffic is impacted. And I've heard a lot about talking about, can there be like another town-wide traffic study? I don't know, but I'm just curious to see what the DPW also has on its radar for long term. And if there's also other departments where we could have people come in and talk about, I really liked Ron's point. It's 1 year budget, but they definitely have ideas for longer term. So if we could hear some of those, I would be interested in that.
Yeah, absolutely, Liz. So if this works out right, kind of after we do our homework, everyone's coming in. So we're going to have that opportunity to talk to Kevin, to talk to Public Works, talk to everybody. I'm going to bring in other people too from some of our committees, Planning Board and other places, just to talk about what they're looking at and what they're seeing. And some of the other committees, Fire Station Building, others, like going to lay it all on the line. Not only our plans for the future, what we need to pay now, but what we owe. And what we haven't done up to this point. So I think getting all of that out there. I love having parks down, and especially some of the smaller things, because they have great ideas. and they're only hamstrung by lack of resources, but they all do a great job, but thanks, Liz. Jay?
Tom?
Anyone? Okay, well, you know what I'm gonna do? I have a list here, and I read it to Ron, some of the things but this is about 15 things that in my head I was just spitballing about. And these are things that maybe aren't maybe we're not looking at money for this, but I mentioned a couple of things. We're looking at our fire stations, right? So you got East Milton. We're seeing some move in a positive direction in terms of building. We have East Milton, funding questions. You got Atherton Street Station, the funding questions. I know, and I don't know, this is something that I need to familiarize myself more. I know more of this through the select board, but the animal shelter issues. I know there's some easements, and there was some money. There was a money issue there at one point. Road improvements. I think the number last year, correct me.
21.
I should say 21 million. Road improvements. We're going to learn more about that. We have the build out of our fires. It's kind of an older list, but last year we had the renovations of our historical fire station. I mentioned the ramp to Lower Guile Field itself. Again, back to Public Works, the DPW building.
Well, DPW is the red herring in the room is they have to hire a replacement for Chase. So nothing matters if they don't have someone leading that group, right? Interim.
Good point, Steve.
I'd also add on there the East Milton Fire Station.
It's on there.
Know what they're going to do with it. They're going to sell it.
Right.
Right.
Well, yeah.
Also, all the main utilities sit in that building, so they can't upend that. But it's going to be sold. Right. They're going to do something with it. Potentially.
Why would we sell property that we have once again? Once again.
We've done it.
Once again. We have done it. I keep questioning that.
It's a big one.
Prime location too.
Who
Then
makes the
let's
call on
develop
that? Does that go from the selectmen
Comes through
to the
here.
warrant committee?
Comes through.
Goes through here.
Town meeting.
Comes all the way through. It's like a monopoly board. I'm trying to think of some other things there too. Listen, I think the other thing that's big for me this year too, you've got multiple contracts. I'd like to see a scheduled contract
Oh
renewals.
yeah, the unions.
You've got all the unions coming into play. What is our plans for that? Is there mediation plans they've got teed up in there? When do they start negotiations? Their FY starts, we're underway.
Okay.
Those are big. And then the biggest pillars in our budget are impacted the most, school, maybe.
We lost the funding for ARPA, we lost a lot of that COVID money.
Right on, ARPA, gone. And so, if you think about it, if you had a stacked pillar of all this stuff, right, where that cost goes, if you've got that budget for the school, then you've got the contract on top of it, and then you got a new school on top of that. That's not just the biggest part, it just becomes ginormous.
Huge.
Ginormous.
And we were short last year.
Yes.
Yeah, there's they need more money for the fourth floor.
Right, you get two major positions in the town, right? Town planner, right? And now you've got DBW, who had very influential leaders who have now moved on, who are executing against a planned strategy. Now what? Potentially. I don't know.
All good points.
Because I look at that then, if you were asking long-term plans, short, mid, long-term plans, that master plan must get impacted because that was his vision or their vision. Now they've got a new leader coming in potentially. Just a thought.
You have the fourth floor too.
The fourth floor at Cunningham, and again, also I put in this the existing schools.
Renovating those.
At 20 plus years now. Roof,
need-
ventilation, windows, floors.
No ACs.
Roofs,
Yep.
biggest cost.
That's right.
Our building that we're sitting in now, I don't know. I don't know if this needs work.
It needs a lot of work.
Thank you, Lori. I know that there was a project through the master plan implementation committee regarding the library and some parking and a
Oh, yeah, right.
project.
That was like 2 million, right?
Here that was mentioned. And other capital projects that we have going on, and that would include a potential upper middle school for the town. So those are things that I wrote down.
They're big.
Can I ask a
I thought
question?
maybe were, like I said, I was just in my head just trying to
But these are all going on this year too.
think this through.
Can I ask, collective bargaining, what is that? Includes the teachers, right?
That's
Police,
the
fire.
teachers, right?
What?
The teachers, I
Yep.
think, are up for a
Yes.
Yeah, their contracts are, yeah.
What about trash? Is that up this year too? Because I remember they all come true around the same time, remember? We were negotiating the last one for town meeting. And we got benefit of negotiation because of Boston. We were kind of piggybacking on them.
I thought trash was contracted out.
It was a
I don't think
contract.
It is,
were.
but it's a
It's
contract.
a contract.
But it's not a union. It's not like they're union employees of the town.
No, but it's
just
a contract that we
contract.
negotiated. It was about a 26% increase term on term, so it's material. Yeah, we should take a look at that. I think it comes up. It's pretty substantial.
Yeah, I remember years ago, Jay, remember the renegotiations of the trash contract?
Yeah.
Do you remember that?
I do. It was in town meeting.
It's under DPW, right?
It's under DPW, and I know that the head of, at the time, his name escapes me, but had come in and discussed the process and how that works with recycling and
It's a schedule of increase.
size of
too.
the town,
Yeah.
and there are a whole slew of factors that go into the contract. I don't know if there were issues with this one or satisfaction with this one.
It was a substantial increase, deal on deal. But I would ask, maybe we get to schedule these things from,
I mean, that's a good idea.
That's a good idea.
just so we've got timeline, so we know.
Yep.
Yeah,
And the
absolutely.
contracts are, yeah.
Yeah.
Tom,
Judy,
if I could ask a question, the East Milton Fire Station and Atherton were brought up in this mini discussion. Have we already done the debt exclusion for those fire stations?
We
Does
have.
anyone know?
we have.
We have, it's already been done then, and it's just waiting to use the,
It's that Hurley amendment.
Oh, the Hurley Amendment issue.
That's what that is. So when the last project, I think, for the schools and the library, when that debt, they went to town meeting, created the Hurley Amendment, who was a selectman at the time, and when the debt was repaid, we would not give money back to the taxpayers in their property tax as a credit. We would keep it to fund the fire stations.
That's right. Keep it on rolling.
Yeah, and to keep it rolling. So it was, in essence, we have the money coming in, but we probably will need the cash before the debt rolls off, continues rolling. So
where are they stashing that money now? Do you know, Lori?
Yeah, it's part of the debt service. It's identified separately, though.
It's on a separate line?
Yes.
And do you know, is it okay, Tom? Do you know if it's for enough money for full funding of each fire station?
I don't think we'll have enough. I think there's talk that we might need more money for it.
Okay. And so we would have to roll out a debt exclusion for the remaining money?
Potentially, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Judy. And I just mentioned the fire stations because in my sense of when we were voting on them and discussing them, that there was the constant fear of the price increases and material increases. And I know there was, like I said, I'm getting lots of information from my neighbors. An additional bay at these Milton fire stations, is that going to cost us more money? So that's why I mentioned these. We did that a long time ago, and prices have not gone down. So that's why. And that's a question, hopefully, the Fire Station Building Committee at some point can answer for us, and we can talk about that as a group. Those are some items. Anyone else? In terms of-
This is Ron. I had a question.
Yeah, Ron, please.
Some of the things that we're talking about, I wonder, are they typically things that the select board also looks at? Because is this something that, if they're going to ask these departments similar questions about their plans and roadmaps and master plans, I just wonder if we're making these folks jump through hurdles to explain things to us, and they also explain it at their meetings, and they explain it to the select board. And I wasn't sure if there's a way that we can streamline this. And also, I think if the select board is already tasked with oversight of these executive plans and these agency plans, I wonder if our role is to tell them what to do, or if our role is to look at fiscal discipline and this is a different lens as opposed to just saying, hey, I want you to go fix some potholes on my street because I live there. Just open question.
Yeah, in terms of the select board meetings, does everyone here watches select board, I trust, right? What do you think about the level of analysis at the select board meetings? Lori? I'm just saying, just to answer Ron's question.
I think information goes to the select board, but if you listen to the discussion that transpires around the table about a serious issue in terms of the dialogue that they have, the deliberation, it is nowhere near the intensity of what happens at this table.
I'd agree. I also think that fiscally, it's important for this group to do the digging and investigating. That's what we've been tasked to do, so that we can educate the public, so that they're aware, so that they can go to the select board and provide or send emails or give them the knowledge that they need to. My concern, and sometimes, is that select board doesn't dig as much as we do, and and options aren't provided that would be best for fiscally the town.
That's a good point.
So I think that's an important aspect of why we are here.
Steve?
For consideration, I think that's a tremendous point, actually. But what if we went to Citizen Speak, or we got time on their calendar to say, we just give you an update of where we sit on these issues? Because I've watched those meetings too. They don't get into analysis deep at all. There's a lot of arguing, yelling, apologizing for yelling at someone from the previous meeting. And you're like, oh my gosh, what's happening right now? Just get along, we need you. Why not? We're doing proactive work here now. Why not continue that and help them? Right? It's a team effort, I think.
That's a good idea.
I'm sorry, Liz?
Well, to Steve's point, because of the fact that we're appointed and not elected, it's not a political thing. So I think we can be a little bit more neutral. And I'm not saying that they're not, interested in the best, having the best interest in the town. Of course not. Of course. But I also think that the nature of Citizen Speak, it's very limited in terms of time. Whereas, as you were saying, Lori, we have the time, or I'm sorry, it was you, Allison. We have the time to really dig in and hear from a lot of different people, whereas they're limited in time and people give basically speeches. We can ask questions of people, really get information. So I just think that they do serve two different functions, and I think that we're very happy with the select board. I think that we need them. However, I do think that as an independent, neutral body, I think that's very important for us.
Anyone else?
We could request time on the agenda, and then just give an update, don't you think? Rather than Citizen Speak, right? Formally be on there. So
As a committee?
Yeah.
I've never seen it happen.
Well, look at it this way. So when we get an article, it comes from them, right? And we don't know the research we've had. A lot of times it comes into us, and there could be a slip green sheet in there that said, this changed, here it is, new facts, let's go. Now, as attorneys, if that happened, you'd probably say, I need some more time to review that information. We don't have that. We're going live at 7:30 or whatever it is, right? So why not try to get in front of that? It's kind of like Schoolhouse Rock, right? How does it become a bill? Just kind of follow it, right?
It might be a good out for them just to get out of the politics and just get into the facts of something like that.
Sometimes they don't weigh in on a warrant article that comes to us. They'll give no opinion, and then it's on us. But
you're right. Somebody presents it to them and says, this is a good idea.
Yeah.
And they say, oh, that's great. Let's send it to town meeting, but it ends up on our desk.
Correct.
And then we spend oodles of time deliberating.
I think we could help them. It kind of goes back to what you were talking about for a long time. Let's get core to the process.
Yeah. Is that a good segue for me to talk about what you and I were talking about?
Yeah, it's a great segue. But you know, Ron, I just want to address Ron. Ron, I appreciate everyone chiming in, and those are all excellent points. Ron, I would agree with you that there is some repetition in presentations sometimes in the information. You know, what Sean's going to be coming here in a little bit, it's going to be very similar to probably what he presented to the select board. So there is some repetition. And I know a lot of us here, we see things ahead of time, but I feel as if though here at our meetings, this is more of kind of getting in the weeds with the public. But certainly, Ron, I would be more than happy to have a conversation with you offline about, you know, streamlining, and if you have any other ideas about, you know, making better use of our time, I would appreciate it.
No, all this makes sense. I think improving how we work with the select board could also help, and I totally agree. I've listened to some of their meetings. I think some of the meeting topics are difficult, and you know, I'm sure they're struggling with how they can work efficiently. But I think the more we think about our roles and their role, and all these departments and how we can be most efficient for everybody, it could be good.
No,
thank you.
No, thank you, Ron. I appreciate it. Okay, well, I don't know if anybody has the, you know, that. Sir.
So I've been fascinated by the conversations and the meetings, and I'm just, thank you. Just curious about the process that those of you who've done this now for the third time coming up, how you feeling about the process in the last couple of years, and where you think this one is, and how is this going to be different, better, worse, the same?
I think the tasks are getting more challenging. Unfortunately, I think the amount of work that was done in the last 2 years on this committee and the hours spent were not taken seriously at town meeting, to be in full transparent. I think the recommendations used to be taken to the highest level, and now they're not, because you have a sway of people voted into town meeting, and this is just my, and it used to be, I just think it's hard because certain members of the community were voted out of town meeting that had been there and served there for years, and it's really sad because maybe they're less known. Maybe they had kids in the school system and they were able to get their name. So I think town meeting to me it's hard to watch, because I think that it's not fair to have certain people be able to get voted in over other people just because they are able to get votes a certain way other than other ways. So I think it's skewed a little bit of town meeting in how they take warrant. But I know that we spent hours, and if you listen to our meetings, we dug really hard into a lot of the things that we spoke about, and I just think that it's not taken as seriously anymore. So it's hard to go into another year of it with the votes that we've provided to the town meeting, because they're going to ultimately decide in what they think is the right decision, even if we give our opinion. And we, you know, and I think we can just do what we can.
It was very hard for me to sit in the town meeting and watch the...
Sorry, it's really hard to hear. Can you speak into a mic, please?
Yeah,
Thank
it's
you.
very hard for me to sit in the town meeting and watch the work that was done by the Warrant Committee not be followed in a close vote. Because I've always had that respect for the town, for the Warrant Committee, and what has come out of it. And it's been very easy for me as a resident of Milton for the last 40 years to basically see what the Warrant Committee had to say, because I saw it as non-political and just basically this is where it comes out. Didn't always vote on every issue, but that way, but knew that there was good work going on here, and I believe that that's going to be the case, continue to be the case. And I'm just kind of taking this all in and seeing what the process is going to be.
So it sounds like that town meeting is not following the recommendations of the warrant committee. Is that essentially?
Yeah, I would say that it's not And it used to be like more of like a neutral, to your point, and I appreciate that because Warren over the last few years has gotten criticized, emails, phone calls, things that were very harsh for people that were just trying to do right by swaying votes, emailing people for voting at the it's turned into where it used to be, you know, that's why we stay off social media, that's why, so it was very challenging for some of us, especially now going, this is going to be a tough year too, because, you know, more so, yeah, because we were, you know, we have override, we have a new school, so but I try to say that, you know, we deserve the same as anybody, you know, we did not receive the type of, you know, actions that people like to, because, you know, for this to work, it needs to be that we aren't swayed, we aren't pressured, we aren't feeling this the way that we have for a couple of years.
It should be unbiased and neutral.
That's the only way it really works. Yeah. And that's how town meeting should work too. And now, and I understand, you know, now things have changed, but you're seeing a lot more of that pressure on people in town meeting. It's like, and I understand that citizens should be able to talk to the town meeting members, and but at the same time, you're seeing it at your school pickup. You're seeing it at where I just think that in order for this to work as a town, we sometimes need to take a step back and allow people to think for themselves and not be pressured.
And I remember when I first got involved, many people that I talked to said they used town meeting. They would read the warrant, but they would go in and listen to the comments that people made at town meeting and make a decision at town meeting. And it seems like the decisions are made before people walk in the door in some cases.
So without being fully informed.
Nobody's listening to what the conversation is on the floor of town meeting. And I shouldn't say nobody, but there's less listening to what's happening at town meeting and the conversations that are occurring than it used to be.
That's a good
That's
call.
a
I think that's a good
change.
call out, because made some notes too. I think they don't know, the folks that come to town meeting, how much deliberating goes into each article. It's hours.
That's right.
Sometimes days, right? And it's important, but I think you asked a question about this year. I think the process is more linear, more focused this year than ever. I mean, we're meeting with folks earlier on, because they're late. Last year they were pretty late with their stuff that they got to us.
And the year before.
But I do think that's important for people to know, because it did get pretty personal in those meetings last year. It was uncomfortable for me, and to a point where I was sitting and looking out at them because they were yelling. It's not very collegial at times, to say it the nicest way. They're very rude, actually, and it does weigh on you. Just I'd say feel free to talk to your team here, because I can tell you, walking a dog, you see someone and they give you a look, you're like, oh geez, what the heck? You know, we're just trying to help. We're volunteering just like them, right? So I think that would be, just keep that in your head. You have a team, people too, to talk to, and I think that's important.
That's a good point.
I thought it was a no place for hate community. Sometimes it doesn't feel like that.
Tom?
Yeah, Julia.
Thanks. I just wanted to weigh in. I have a different view, I think, than some people on the Warrant Committee. To me, town meeting is an elected body, and Warrant Committee we are, as Liz said earlier, appointed. So to say that town meeting isn't representative of the town, or that people are being swayed into doing something or another, I mean, this is the system of government that we have in this town, and we are welcome to vote people in or out of their town meeting positions. So I take issue with saying that, you know, something has happened with town meeting where things like people shouldn't get to represent or have a voice, because they were literally elected to do that by the people of their precinct. So I have a very different view on Warrant Committee versus town meeting. And I think that the fact that town meeting has voted out of step with the Warrant Committee's recommendations so often over the last few years I think there's some responsibility of the warrant committee to look in the mirror and maybe figure out why that might be. And I understand that warrant committee is a lot of work and it is often a thankless job. So, I mean, there is certainly that. And I think feeling maybe underappreciated is normal and to be expected. But just because elected members of town meeting don't vote in line with what the warrant committee recommends, I don't think that means that there's like nefarious goings on in the background of town meeting.
Thank you, Julia. I appreciate you sharing that very much. Liz?
Well, if we're still trying to use up time, I don't know if that's the case. Okay, great.
Budget
Is
this
he
year.
coming tonight, though?
Yes.
He'll be here.
So I wanted to reiterate something that Allison said and that Steve said, which is that we're all neighbors with each other. So I have to give you credit, Tom, and also moderator Hiss credit for keeping it under control, especially at town meeting. I thought that moderator Hiss has done a very good job of keeping everybody in line and keeping the decorum. So I'm just complimenting people now, but I think that thank you. It has been very challenging. The last town meeting was very challenging. There were a lot of uncomfortable things that happened for a lot of different people. And, without weighing in on my various thoughts about all of that, I think that the moderator did a good job of keeping people under control. And I appreciate that. And I think you, Tom, have done a great job. I mean, we've only been here a few times, but still keeping things here very civil. So even if I disagree with any particular point, I feel like, yes, everybody's really coming at it in good faith, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
As someone new and not having function in town meeting, I mean, I wanted to comment on a couple of things that are really surprising to me. One is that the roles of the select town meeting and warrant committee aren't as clearly defined, that we're still asking questions about the functions of each. That's surprising. There may be a reason for it. I'm just pointing that out. When I think about the purpose of boards, how they're structured, and why you create subcommittees, and if you think of the warrant committee as a subcommittee of town governance, hopefully Bob has gone about appointing people on the warrant committee because we have some capacity to look at budgets or town planning or have some sort of experience that allows us to at least critically analyze the information and pass it on to town meeting. And I would love to see if town meeting goes against advice that we provide, or that they document a reason for it, publicly express a reason for it. And when you have when I think about IT risk management, for example, which is one of the areas that I spend a lot of time in, there are times where we may go against a recommendation or a specific guideline, but we'll document why. Like, we have a very specific reason why we don't think this policy makes sense for us, and it's an acknowledged risk. And if town meeting isn't doing that, I have like a fundamental problem with that. Like, what do they do? For what rationale are they going against the time spent in analyzing or the recommendations that we're putting forward?
That's a good question, but I think that we've hit a bunch of things here, and I think the ideas between town meeting and the warrant committee, and you got to remember there's the town itself, right? And you have all the voters in the town, right? So sometimes I like to think of it a little different way. How does the town feel as opposed to town meeting, as opposed to the warrant committee, as opposed, So who's out of step? You can always ask the question, right? I mean, you have the, but we have a specific duty, especially this, this fiscal year, that's what we're talking about, and we're gonna document, we're gonna do our research, we're gonna present the information in our comment, and we're gonna double down on it, right? Because we're going to double check our work, and we're going to say, here you go, and do with that what you think is the best thing to do. I think, to Julia's point, it is. It's up to town. They're going to vote, and they're going to vote whatever way they'd like to vote. But I think it's still important that this year, we do our best, and we document no matter what, override, no override, this, that, and that we back up our work.
Well, and the citizens.
And even in the, I'm sorry.
Oh, no, sorry, I didn't mean to, but in the citizens, to that point too, can petition against town meeting. That's what the form of democracy that luckily we have.
Yeah, our town charter, right? So, I think too, in speaking to how we come together and how our moderator appoints us, we're almost from every precinct, the best we can. We all have individual things that we do every day for our work, and we bring that expertise and the expertise as citizens in our daily lives driving around here, and we speak freely. We're not elected. And I think that our moderator does a good job in trying to spread us out, so we're not here in the echo room. I can talk to people on my street every weekend, and all I hear is speed bumps. Right? Right, speed bumps, and that's great, but this, but...
Give them Liz's number.
Yeah, exactly. I haven't done that yet, but...
Water fountains. Water fountains.
It's that diversity that the moderator attempts to reach here by appointing different people, and the process is going to work itself through. But I'm very proud to be a Warrant Committee member. I was proud the last 2 years, even in light of tough things, and I thought we did a good job, and I was proud of the work that we did. And like I said, it didn't get, but we're going to do the same this year. I think we're taking a slightly different approach, and I think it's just in terms of how we're organizing and getting together and discussing everything. But I trust that the decisions we make this year, there will be many town meeting members and citizens of the town who listen and weigh in and vote appropriately.
Do we get that feedback from town meeting as to why they go against recommendations?
They'll stand up and they'll tell us.
You can hear it on the floor.
Yeah.
Right on the floor. Yeah.
More than you'd like.
Okay.
Yeah, sure, Liz.
Well,
Absolutely.
Sean takes his coat off or whatever. Well, I like your point, but I also think of it, and I understand your frustration, and I'm new here, so I'm not frustrated yet. But I kind of liken it to when you have a president from one party, you often have a Congress from another party. So I don't think it's the worst thing if this board votes one way, if town meeting votes another way, if the select board feels a certain way, if different committees feel different ways, and that way together, I think that's checks and balances and what makes a democracy. So I definitely, however, want to agree with your point that I think that the Warrant Committee should be really respected. I was absolutely delighted when Bob called me. I had applied 2 years in a row. So I think it's a really big honor, but I do think that I try to look at things optimistically, so I think it will be a great year no matter what town meeting does. So,
And I agree with you, Liz, and I share that optimism too. Right? We're going to put our best foot forward. And speaking of best feet going forward, we have the chair of the Town of Milton School Building Committee, who I had mentioned very briefly in the beginning of the meeting. Mr. Rourke, please come up so I can talk about you. Mr. O'Rourke has been the chair of the school building committee for years and has led taken his expertise and brought it to the town of Milton and this project for a potential new school in the town. Sean's done a great job. He presents all over the place. I don't think he sleeps at all between his professional work and all the work he does in the school, but he agreed to come in here today. He's got a busy schedule, and I accepted that request, or not the request, it was my request, but he said I can come in on Monday, and I said yeah, absolutely, because it's a very important issue. It's huge, and I want to get the information out to the committee and the public at large. And that all being said, Sean O'Rourke, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Just going to join as a panelist. I'm just going to slide.
So in terms of our previous, oh, Sean, you can keep doing it.
Okay.
Just in terms of our previous discussion regarding fiscal year budget, we can, after Sean presents, if the committee would like, we can go back and we can continue to discuss if we like. If people have other points they would like to raise, I'd ask that we do it, tonight, just kind of get it out there.
Okay.
Jay and I had discussed something that he wants to mention, some things that he's done, which I'd like to hear from. I think it would be very good if we all hear from him. So, all that being said, Sean, the floor is yours.
All right, just give me 1 second to get this open up. It's on my hard drive. Give me 1 second, sorry.
Sean just came from a meeting, as I said, up at the high school.
Pressed by a man that carries it, so I'm not,
Yeah.
you can't handle it all.
I don't trust my computer. I'll die at some point. At least this I can plug into somebody else's. All right, cool.
Great.
All right.
Sir, the floor is yours. Thanks so much.
Thank you. And just formality, Sean O'Rourke, 27 Corey Lane, town meeting member of Precinct 8 and chair of the school building committee. So, quick thing, agenda for the presentation, just to kind of give you a high-level overview. For new members of this board or committee is a quick introduction to the school building committee. I'll walk you through some work that we've done over the summer in regards to what we call visioning sessions, how those visioning sessions led into the design, further how the design led into the cost estimate, and then finally wrap it up with our kind of overall schedule. So school building committee, for those of you who are not aware, are made up of 9 members. 5 of us at the top are appointed by the town moderator. The 2 at the bottom left are members of the school committee that are appointed, and from the bottom right are select board appointees, Mr. Cohane and Glenn Hoffman, who's a local architect. So it's a good mix of design and construction professionals. We've been working for 5.5 years right now, so it's been a lot of work. So the enrollment in the elementary schools that you see here is what represents preschool to 5th grade, which is essentially what we see at the elementary school levels. Probably around 2015, 2016, which is the middle of the graph, we started eclipsing that, and then it started spiking up 2016 to the peak that you see in 2019. That's the one with the 366 number at the top. We experienced COVID, dropped down, and then it's still kind of leveled off after that. So I'm waiting new numbers right now. We're waiting to get those from what we submitted to DESE and also our NESDEC projections. I can tell you the kindergarten class in there now is probably one of the largest ever. So the kindergarten classes and preschool are the ones that kind of contribute a lot to what you see for classroom convergence. So right now the district is made up of 4 elementary schools. Cunningham and Tucker have preschool, and then everything else is a mixture of up to 5th grade. I got to hit my Teams to shut off even while I'm here. I'm still getting messages from work. Sorry about that.
No, it's okay.
Those 4 elementary schools feed up to the Pierce Middle School and then forward to the high school. So what the plan is, or what we've been doing, is to basically redistribute preschool and 5th grade out of the elementary schools and make them all K to 4th. And by doing so, we free up space in the elementary schools. We don't need to redistrict. We then take the Pierce school. The Pierce would go from 3 grade levels to 2, so just 5th and 6th. And then what we're creating, or what we'll talk about tonight, is an upper middle school. They'll have 7th and 8th grade along with preschool. And then the high school will basically stay as is. But one of the things with this too is the space we free up at the Pierce, the existing Pierce Middle School. There's talks of moving some of the central offices, some of the administrative stuff at the high school over to there, thus freeing up space at the high school. So again, this one project kind of addressing all levels. So the site, for those of you who are not aware, is over at Gow Road. We went through last year the land swap, which basically incurred using a portion on the left-hand side of Gow Road, which was parkland, and the right-hand side of the road, which is conservation land. The legislation for this went through this year, was signed by the governor at the end of July, so this is now law, which worked well. We passed this over to our architects that started looking at on the site, basically how to develop it, utilize the acreage that was there, and start, planning out a school from a high level. So that's basically the introduction. The visioning sessions, what we'll touch on is, so our team we've onboarded an owner's project manager, their PMA consultants, and an architectural engineering team of Arrow Street. And what we did with them is they have an educational planner. So that planner came in, worked with district leadership, teachers, principals, specialty staff, and basically went through and looked at all these workshops of getting people in a room, collaborating a number of ideas, and using that, as I said, to kind of feed into the design. One of the other ones that we did, and we'll touch on, is we did a number of school tours of recent construction to kind of see what are trends, what do all those new schools look like and stuff. So we threw a lot at the wall, made it stick, and came up with an overall program, which we'll walk through. So the site visits that we did, we went to 2 middle schools, the Chapman Middle School in Weymouth and the Lester Gates Middle School in Situate. I wasn't able to attend those, but I was able to attend the Early Childhood Education Center in Newton and the Douglas Gates Preschool in Acton Boxborough, which is probably the most closest to what we're building. So as we went through it, this is Chapman Middle School in Weymouth. It's a beautiful school. It actually won an award from one of the committees I'm on, I think 2 years ago. This one's remarkable, just the space, how big it was, and like how well they executed it. The other one that was there too was the Lester Gates Middle School. Again, another lot of space, a lot of light, very well laid out. Into the Newton Early Childhood Center. This was a former elementary school that they renovated and turned it into a preschool. The size of the rooms were dramatically bigger than what we have here. The spaces, it was just a really cool space to go into and see. And then finally, the one that I said that was most representative of what we would be doing is the Lester Gates Preschool. So this is a preschool that's also as part of, I think, a middle school or an elementary school. So it basically had the same feel as what we were doing over preschool along with another school together. So when we started looking at these and you compare and contrast them to kind of what we have in Milton against what others have, these slides kind of dictate it. So what you're seeing is on the bottom is some of the cannibalized rooms that we've created. That one's actually in the library of the Collycott-Cunningham space. That's been revised now. They've actually built it out a little bit more robust with permanent walls and everything, but at the time, this is what it looked like. But again, just kind of comparing, contrasting what others have against what we at Milton have. Secondly, music classrooms. These are the biggest ones because all our music classrooms are gone. Most of the teachers work off carts or they're on a stage, as you see in the bottom. The others that you see at the top are dedicated rooms, lots of space, a lot of tech. Similarly, the libraries, again, most of our library spaces have been cannibalized for classroom space, storage, everything else. And on the bottom, what you see there is the Collycott Cunningham Library, and up the top is the Douglas Gates School Library. And then finally, which is one that gets overlooked a lot, is teacher space. So previously we had teacher space on the stage of Collycott Cunningham at one point, and essentially just desks behind a curtain. Whereas, the other spaces that you see there, they have proper storage, good furniture and stuff like that. So again, when you compare and contrast, it was stunning. So we took all this stuff from these site visits, the visioning sessions that we did, and we started, turning the architects loose on what it's going to look like. So this slide's kind of important. So what we did here is, as you're aware, we did an initial study with DRA Architecture when we were looking at the land swap, trying to develop what we could fit on that site. And they had a building of 115 to 120,000 square feet. But there were a number of things that came out of that when we did our visioning session that it didn't include, namely an auditorium. There wasn't really as much deep thought put into that because we were just kind of running quick and we didn't have the budget to really do it. What we did then is compare that to what MSBA had. MSBA, for the type of middle school we were doing, had 111,000 square feet. It didn't allow us to do a preschool as part of that for reimbursement, so that was kind of the program that we looked at there. So we took the visioning session. Now, the visioning session, as I said, is like a wish list. Like, we went through everything and said, what do you want? Do you want a pool? Do you want a hockey rink? You know what I mean? All these cool things. Put it all out there, see what's there. And what happened there is we knew we got a really exaggerated space that was a wish list for everybody. So that was our kind of starting point. It was that when you added them up, it was about 200,000 square feet. And so, again, it was aspirational. And then, reality set in of just doing rough numbers for costs. We knew there was no way we could afford a 200,000 square foot space, as everybody knows what the cost is for our current program. So we did an initial cut on that first revision. So what we did is we took some of the classroom spaces that were there. We reduced the size of the classroom spaces, and we used Pierce as a guide, because Pierce's classroom spaces were actually smaller, and we asked teachers, does it work for you? And they were fine. They were happy with it. So we were allowed to reduce some of that. We reduced the cafeteria size down and basically went to 3 lunches. So there was some right sizing there. And then further, we took one more last cut. And the last cut that you see on the right-hand side is kind of where we're at today. So we went from 8 teams, which was basically 4 teams per grade for 7th and 8th. And we've gone down to 7 teams. So what that means is some year you might have a group of 4 7th grade classes and 3 8th grade classes, or vice versa. We reduced world languages down, and again, we increased the lunch cycles. So one of the things to keep in mind as we talk about this is the revisions that some people are looking for right now have already really been done, and we've kind of scaled this down, what we feel is as tight as we possibly can get. So the other that we did too is we took that reduced square footage and said, did we cut it too much? You know what I mean? Are we in the right ballpark? So we started looking at square footages of other projects that were out there, and basically using number of students towards the overall square footage to just give an average square foot. And from what it showed, we're right in line with what those other projects are. They averaged out at about 186 square foot per student, and we're at 190 to 191. So for us, we were kind of right in line. So that exercise was a good one to do. So jump into the design, look at the middle school. And I'm just coming from a school building committee meeting. We just got updated floor plans for our final schematic design. I can pull those up later if we need to. But what you see here is kind of a blown up view of the building floor by floor. At the time, this had 8 teams. We went to 7, so that those classes you see there, those are part of the ones we've kind of hacked off. All right, so first floor, when you look at this, obviously it's a gymnasium. Gymnasium does have bleachers. The existing Pierce does not have bleachers. There was something that, we heard from parents. They want space so they're not standing against the wall. Associated locker rooms and stuff next to them. The whole bottom side of the page there, you'll see is the auditorium. And to the left of the auditorium is essentially chorus space, ensemble space, and stuff like that. And I have the floor plans that I can pull up, if people want to dive in. And then essentially what you see in orange to the right of the auditorium is the cafeteria. Behind the cafeteria, and let's see if I can point to it too. Yeah, not good with the touch. Behind the cafeteria is kind of support space. And then as we get up into here, this is one of the unique updates that we did. This gray area here is basically all mechanical, electrical, plumbing space. And what we did, the reason we did that is, and we can talk about it in the landscape end of it, we're filling in, where's my mouse? We're filling in this area. So previously we were carrying a large retaining wall here, and now we're using the edge of the building as the retaining wall. And what that allows us to do is fill in this space, so on the second floor you're able to walk out of the building and be at the same level as Brooks Field. So you can actually walk out to a plaza that looks right at Brooks Field. It was a really nice piece that we're able to do. So the second floor, as you go up, you'll start seeing get the mouse back. There we go. Media lab here, which is essentially the library, guidance space. And then what we do is we start introducing special ed. And what you see is this is a team of classrooms. So it consists of 3 classrooms and a science space. So when we talk about 7 teams, you'll see 7 of these clusters as it goes around the building. Art rooms over here, and another space, I forget what that is, but again, we can pull it up as we go through. Third and fourth floor are kind of repetitive. They're mainly classroom spaces that you see there with some special ed spaces mixed in. And on this one, you basically have 3 teams, 1 at each end, and then 1 in the middle. And then similarly on the fourth floor, very similar layout to it. Now the other component, so one of the things that came up when we were looking at this was, are we building a singular building with preschool integrated to it, or are we going to split it into 2 separate buildings? One of the things that we looked at is the ability to split it into a separate building we thought would actually save money, where some people think it will be more expensive. It allows us to use a different construction type for the smaller building, and as we were pricing it out, it basically showed that it was kind of a negative, not a net zero energy, but a net zero cost factor as part of it. So that became one of the nice things, and the ability to kind of separate the 2 of them, made the building a little less obtrusive. Originally, the building layout, when we did it with the preschool integrated, was a lot closer to the neighbors at Home Inc. and bigger at that time, where now they'd only have a 2-story structure adjacent to them, whereas before it was a 4-story larger part of the building. So when we look at the preschool, I've got the updated floor plans, but I didn't get it for this presentation, but essentially what you're seeing here is classroom spaces in blue, special ed components there, and then administration on the first floor. I do have some outdoor play area updates that we have for this area too, so essentially the whole space around it between this building and Brooks Field will have play area for outdoor space. So what we did originally in the end of June, as we wrapped up this first portion of it, we issued our feasibility study, which was a narrative that laid out all the subcomponents outside of architectural for narratives there. That was given to a cost estimator, and through that cost estimator, he developed a cost, mainly dollars per square foot for the type of spaces we were doing, and then our percentage on top of that for our soft costs, which was typically about 30%. Now, the MSBA publishes all their cost data, so their trend line, if you go onto their website and look it up, looks like this, and that basically got us into right in beginning at 2022. And then basically all the other data points that you see here are a different color. They're blue. Sorry, trying to get the Zoom attendance kind of covers it up, sorry. But on this side of the graph, you can see it goes from orange to blue. The orange numbers were actual bid prices that came in. The blue that you see on the right are new estimates that they've seen kind of post-COVID. So if you take a trend line and look at that, you can actually see since 2022, it's been a relatively sharp increase in costs for what we've been seeing there. The cost that we're at right now is about $877 a square foot. And if you look at the data points that kind of wrap around that, we're kind of right at the midpoint of where everything is. So looking back at these numbers, the cost for what we're doing is kind of, in line. So as we looked at this, and I'm sure everyone's aware, we had a cost estimate, a construction cost of $133 million. And when you look at that, the breakdown of that is essentially there for site work, the building, and additional site work for the building, a contingency budget that's there that basically goes in for certain things because we're at schematic design to leverage into in case things come up. An escalation of $5 million that was assuming that we were starting this year. And then just basically general conditions, bonds, insurance, overhead and profit on top of the overall project. And then, so as we did those out, as I mentioned, there was a 30% kind of soft cost in there for the architects, the OPMs, furnishings, testing, stuff like that. It came out to the overall project cost, which I'm sure everyone's aware of, $173 million. The one thing to note on there, we are planning a geothermal heat pump as part of this building. Is that what that does is it realizes us a rebate, an energy incentive of probably $8 to $9 million. So the 173, if you take that off at the end, we're roughly 165 to 164. Now, we worked with the architects, as we were finishing up over the summer. Our anticipation or hope was to have a fall town meeting. Once we knew we weren't going to be on the November ballot, the push was to get additional funding to keep the design going. And then with that assumed town meeting, we'd be able to refund or build our budget out enough to get the architects going again. Essentially in January, in anticipation of a town meeting in May. Obviously, I'm sure as the Warrant Committee is aware, there's no town meeting in December right now, so you guys have a nice, easy schedule right now, which is cool. But essentially, for us, at some point, we're going to need additional funding. So the funding that was afforded to us the previous town meetings, last May and the previous December, has been expended. So, essentially, we're out of money for the architects. They're wrapping up their schematic design probably in the next couple of weeks. And essentially after that, we're essentially on hold because there's no more funding for us. So, the entire project kind of comes to a standstill. So what we're looking at with this was, we were trying to salvage an opening date of fall 2027. And when we worked with the architects, we thought if we got a December town meeting, additional funding, and a follow-on town meeting in May with a vote following after that in June, we could still keep schedule with that, kind of work hard and make it work. The reality is there's no way we're gonna hit 2027. So this whole timeline shifts based on when the next town meeting is and essentially when that vote will happen. But essentially with that, what our plan to deploy this or to make it fast and economical is to do a site prep package first. So we basically own the site now. We need to move the road, grade it, and get it ready for a building. So we don't have to wait for the full design of the building to do that. And so the initial was to have a site package first and then go with a separate construction package for the buildings afterwards. So, in closing, a lot of the questions that have led up to this over the past 5 years are what are we building? Middle school, preschool, we got that answered. Where is it going? We answered that with the land swap, and it's signed to law. And the main one now is how much will it cost? We've got a cost estimate in there now. The schematic design that we just got today is back in with the cost estimator to give us an updated cost estimate to kind of look at that, to see if there's any savings there, because we've got a lot more detail than what we did in June, and that's about it. And with that, open up to any questions.
Thank you, Sean.
No problem.
I really appreciate it. Now, kind of a bird's eye view. I know that other members may possess some more information, but just, based upon what Sean has given us tonight, any questions?
Yeah. We didn't get this, I got a few questions, but
Sure.
we didn't get this presentation, right?
No.
No.
Could we get that? a copy?
Yeah, I'll send it to you, Sean. I think I might have.
You got a lot.
Oh, switch it.
I've switched it.
Sorry.
Yeah, I got
No,
that.
it's all right.
There were different numbers.
I can send that. I'll send this out to everybody.
Okay.
Yeah, so the presentation I sent earlier was just kind of background information before I had the chance to do all this. When I had this presentation, I just did it today. It's basically pulls from previous presentations I've done. I sent it to the chair earlier today and just asked to distribute it. So I apologize if you didn't get it.
No worries.
Yep.
Yeah, a lot of work on it. I respect that.
Thanks.
I'm new, so I want to go back. My question is, like, the student population has been static for like the last 6 years. And I don't know how this year's numbers came out.
Mm-hmm.
But is there anything? And I know that at Cunningham they're going to add classrooms.
Yep.
Is there anything we have that says like what the population is, number of classrooms, and number of students per classroom? Like, how many classrooms are we short?
Yeah, so I'm actually working on that right now. So we did the space needs study in 2019 that identified 26 classrooms deficiency for the elementary schools.
Right.
That was, if I can go back to the initial graph. There we go. There we go. So essentially, the horizontal yellow line there shows kind of what the elementary capacity is at 1900. So we've gone through the spaces that the schools were designed for and kind of confirmed what that 1900 number was. So if you look, this point...
I'm sorry, is that total? I'm sorry, is that total 1900 or?
Correct. Yep. Between
elementary school.
Yep, between all four schools, the kind of overall capacity for what the buildings were built for is 1900. I think it's like 1904 to be exact. But essentially what you see is in this time right here, which is 2009, is basically where we started eclipsing what that was. Sorry about that. It's a problem with the touchscreen mouse. We eclipsed that and just basically have been ramping up over that. And the one thing to note on there is where those spikes occurred, the bigger at the top of the graph, they're corresponding to larger kindergarten classes at that smaller level. And once those larger kindergarten classes come in, they propagate through. And when they're backfilled next year by another big class, it just starts making that spike go up. So technically right now, we're operating essentially one entire grade level above what our capacity is.
So the increase seems to be on the elementary school level, not necessarily the middle school or the high school level.
No, the graph I only have here is for the elementary school level. So what we've seen is these spikes that you're seeing here, as they go off the graph, they're into the middle school. So when we were formed in 2019, the crunch was at the elementary school level. It is also now at the middle school level. If you talk to Dr. Fish, he will fully, the sizes of the classes that are coming in there are much larger.
I'm sorry, just to go tailor back to both our thing is, like, I think that would be helpful if we saw, like, how many classrooms we have in elementary school,
Agreed.
Middle school, high school, and then the addition of the Cunningham classes. We should add that to it too.
That's important.
See that.
Because I'm curious to see what the spike is in the particularly the 7th and 8th grade. Because I think elementary school, at least in my experience when my children were in the schools, it's the 7th and 8th grade seem to, I don't want to say, level off is the perfect
I mean,
word.
it's interesting that you would build a
But I don't know if
7th,
it's different now.
when most kids leave to go
Right.
to BC High or
Right.
private schools. I mean,
Exactly, because they
most
opt out.
of the, so that's, I think why, the question I would have is like, how did we get to this point, like, of our options? And I think the classrooms would give us a really good idea of like what was needed, but, like when I watched the tapes of like the school committees in March 2019, they talked about building an early childhood center and adding it back to high school and that would, meet the need of, I just want to know how we got from, that, and then like, did we present options, and then did the select board, as, we're only appointed, but the select board's elected, and you're, appointed, so like, did they vote on these options, or was like, how did we get to this 7th and 8th grade school?
Because I always thought it was another elementary school, which is exactly what you said. And now we're moving, not that I think, and I'm not an educational professional by any means, but I've heard that it does make sense to keep the 5th and 6th grade together in some levels, so that the transition to 7th and 8th and then to high school is, it's better for students. That's what I've heard and read. But it just seems that, like, I am curious about the classroom size for particularly 7th and 8th grade, because it seems like we're compensating for the overflow for elementary.
Anybody want me to respond?
Yeah.
Well,
Sorry,
please.
a lot of questions. I'm just trying to figure out when to chime in.
That's my fault, so if you
No
could-
problem.
If you could, Sean, please.
So, kind of wrap it all up. So how did we get here? So the school building committee, we took the 2019 space needs study that looked at an early childhood education center, also looked at building a new elementary school, right? And when we looked at that, the thought was, originally, the original intent, if you go back to school building committees 5 or 6 years ago, was to build new elementary school. As these grades started, as time started going on and the grades started propagating up into the middle school, and we started hearing from middle school, that's where this option came up. The decision that was made by this is we presented these options to the school committee. The school committee voted on this and unanimously chose the upper middle school option. So it was a decision by the school committee at the time when we did that. The grade levels and stuff like that, we can pull that stuff together for you to see. But as Warrant Committee members too, you can do your own research. I ask you to email Dr. Fish and ask him his opinion on this, as far as what he feels the needs are at his school, and what his space needs are. Reach out to each principal and ask them. The PTO meeting I had to attend at Collycott Cunningham this past last month, we had to have it outside because there's no space in there. When we had MSBA come in, there was no space in the building. We had to sit outside. So these, I ask you to reach out to each principal, ask them what their opinions are of this. They live it day in and day out, and hear from them. Even have them come in and present to you if you want.
I just have another question. So these, the space, is it, again, we can do our own research, but I'm curious to know whether they are needs or wants.
So needs was visioning. Okay. We're at 200,000 square feet. Wants, right? Those are wants. Needs right now is 152,000 square feet we're at.
Okay.
I'm gonna go online. Sure. Julia, I think you were first.
I actually think Judy was. first.
Oh, thank you, Julia.
That's so nice.
I'll make it quick, okay? Sean, I think I heard, but if you could clarify for me, that you're gonna do this in 2 phases, the site prep and then the build. So my question goes, that makes more sense for you, is in progression of the completed project. Is it still going to be one override that you're just going to proportion into 2 separate things? The site prep, that's done. You can wait a little bit and then get the build. Or are you going to actually go for 2 different overrides? I'm confused, and I'm going to let you unconfuse me.
No problem. Keep it simple. So it's, what we're asking is one debt exclusion for the overall project. And then that debt exclusion would fund essentially 2 different construction projects, one being the road realignment that I'm showing here, and then the second phase under that same debt exclusion would do the building construction.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
We're going to go to Julia next. Julia?
Thanks. Thanks, Sean. So if this project does not get to move forward for whatever reason, there's no appetite for it in the town. What's plan B, and like who is in charge of coming up with that for this space that is obviously needed?
Yeah, so that still falls on us as our charge. So, school building committee is charged with temporary space needs along with permanent space needs. A lot of the temporary space needs up till now, as far as like putting a partition up or putting a wall up with a subdivided classroom or something like that, the facilities advisory subcommittee of the school committee has been doing that. So what you referenced was, the Cunningham 4th floor. They've been kind of running with that. Recently, for us, we really haven't touched it because we've been focused on the overall project. So essentially with us, what we're looking to do is, our understanding is, this is the option to put this in front of town meeting is imminent, so it should be coming soon, hence why I'm here. And then after town meeting, assuming it gets approved, so it would need a 2/3 approval at town meeting, it would then go to the voters. I think at that point, if it was to fail, we would look at, what are our options at that point, and then it would fall on the school building committee to kind of develop what those other options would be.
But isn't there a step in there where the select board has to put the debt exclusion on a ballot?
Correct. So the process to get everything funded is to put a warrant article. So the school building committee's already voted on or recommended 2 warrant articles to the select board for whatever the next town meeting is going to be. So essentially the process would be, when those articles are heard at town meeting, have them voted on. Once they're approved, the select board has 90 days to issue a town-wide ballot. It would then be voted on town-wide. The town would have to pass it by a majority greater than 50%, and if it did that, we'd be funded and able to do this project. If it fell below that 50%, or if even before that it didn't pass town meeting, we would need to look at other options at that point.
But can't the select board refuse to put it on a ballot?
The select board has already done that, and they can continue to do that, yes.
So that's another barrier, potential barrier for the whole project?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Peter, Liz, Allison, Jay.
Wow. All right.
Yeah, I know, Sean.
All good.
So Peter first.
My first question, I
Yes,
guess,
sir.
is projecting student population. I know you should be able to get us those numbers. Will you project out to 5 years, 10 years out?
Yeah, so part of one of the very first things I did when I took on chair of this, so originally when we were formed, Carrie Hurley was our chair. She stepped down about a year into the project. So as I stepped up to take over it, I wanted to make sure the numbers were tight, because I knew this day would come where people ask questions about the numbers. So NESDEC is a company or an organization that's hired by the district to do kind of long-term projections. I'll send you the NESDEC data. I ask you to look at it from 2011, 2012, and look at their projections to where we are now, their long-term projections. You'll see they're off every time. The way NESDEC does their projections, they looked at what permits have been issued in the town, so they know what the constructions are, and they look at the birth rates. And they take the birth rate and they extrapolate it out by 5 years. So if there's kids here that are born, they say 5 years later they're entering preschool or kindergarten, and they base their enrollment numbers on that. They don't take into account real estate transactions. So I took myself and went through, took my friend's MLS number, pulled the real estate transactions, and started overlaying real estate transactions against these spikes that we're seeing. And as everybody knows, when a house sells in Milton, a family moves in. Those things NESDEC does not take into account. So their long-term projections are always very conservative and never accurate. So you can utilize them that are there. I would say if we were operating tight to the 1,900 capacity that we're looking at, we'd have some wiggle room, but operating one grade level above it with really no space, no margin for error right now, I do not put any credibility into NESDEC's long-term projections based on my analysis.
Thanks. I had kind of a four-part question, but it's all kind of interrelated. So I was curious, and certainly the members among us who are on the sort of school, what would you call it, like the school subcommittee of the Warrant Committee, whatever. I'm curious about sort of amongst the 4 elementary schools. So you talked about sort of all the elementary schools as kind of one thing, but among the 4 different elementary schools, I'm curious if certain ones, or if it's all of them, that are facing needs with respect to rooms. Or I know when I was at that PTO meeting outside with you, they talked about how there's, only so much room in a kindergarten class, and if somebody moved into town in the middle of the year, they would have to go to a different school. So it seems like there's room in at least one other school. So I'm curious about sort of comparing the different elementary schools. And the reason why I ask is because, the town is sort of very diverse, and I want to make sure from like an equitable lens that, we're not shortchanging one elementary school over another. And my second point was with respect to the people who do go to private school, I was wondering if, just also from an equitable lens, if they're going because they want to go, because BC High is a great school and they're interested in that, or if they're going because they feel, I just don't know, if they feel like it's overcrowded. And if there's been discussions with people that are opting out of the public school to see what is it that's causing people to want to leave. And then also one concern that I have about having this sort of middle school plan is if you're taking these 5th graders who live within a mile of their school and you're taking them to go to a different kind of part of town, assuming that those people would be more on the buses. I know we have like big bus availability problems right now. And then lastly, and I'm sorry to inundate you with so much, I'm curious about the impact on the French program and if we're going to have to hire more French teachers because you're creating a new school.
We're going to have to hire more than just French teachers.
Oh, yeah, but French, I mean, yeah, but
Everything,
French.
someone's going to run the
the
building.
non-French version.
My kids are French, so I'm just curious.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
it's
it's
just
gonna be
a
a
balance.
Do your best with that.
I'm going to do my best. I'll start
Like
with the
6
most
questions
recent,
or
work
that.
backwards. So the French program I can't talk about, all right? Mainly, it's a school committee thing. We deal with programmatic things. In regards to teachers, we're reallocating spaces in classrooms. So the teachers that are teaching in these classrooms now at Pierce or anywhere in the district are just moving into this building. There is some overlay of, like, say, a gym teacher teaching at Pierce. He's not going to teach at both of these, so you'd have to hire a new gym teacher. But the majority of the staff already exists within Milton Public Schools. So we're not creating a new school and hiring every teacher for every space that you're seeing here. Majority of the teachers already exist.
Isn't the goal though to like space out the classrooms though? Like and add more teachers so that they have less students in the class?
And especially crowded classrooms.
Okay, when
No, is it,
Yeah,
but that's
just one of the top one.
goal?
No, so what we're doing is some of the teachers now are teaching in multiple classrooms, and giving them a dedicated classroom rather than a shared one is a way of doing that.
I'm still confused on the goal. If our goal is to create less kids in the classroom, we need to hire more teachers.
Can I tag on to that? So for example, if you have a classroom with 25 kids, right? And that's overcrowding, and that's one teacher. And if you want more classrooms, so you'll split that in half, say 12, right? And so you're gonna need another teacher you'll keep one for 12 and another for 12. So you'll
Yep.
have to hire more teachers.
Yeah. What I would say is, at some point, I'm sure the superintendent will be here. For me, I'm a construction. Yeah, I'm not trying to pass it off. But
Well, I just we should know the big picture of operating the school.
And there was operating costs provided by the superintendent to the select board. So the operating costs there, I think there's still like 4 more parts of Liz's stuff.
No, well, but the select board didn't vote on the school though,
I
right?
understand, but the operating costs were provided to the select board from the superintendent.
Oh, okay.
So that's why, members, I'm having schools coming in next week. Because this is kind of like,
Yeah, there's some stuff
Yeah,
I
I
can
realize
answer,
it's
you know.
beyond, yeah.
Ask me about the HVAC,
Stuff at
mechanical,
the
electrical,
school.
plumbing, I can answer all that
Well, speaking
stuff.
and lighting.
Well,
But,
we
okay,
still
so
got
we
a
have.
number- we still got a
so
number
we've
of
got- We've got Liz,
Yep.
we have Jay, we have Judy, so, and then Brian.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you did. Okay, we'll come
Yeah, I
back.
had my own
She's on
question.
Liz's questions.
As long
Liz's.
as you need me, so.
Patient, too.
All right, so French teachers, working backwards. What was it before that?
Okay, buses. If the fifth graders
Mm-hmm.
are now having to go to the upper middle school, they're on buses earlier than they would be if they're going to sixth grade. And we already have not necessarily enough buses. I know people have trouble getting on the buses.
Yep. So again, in regards to transportation and stuff like that, that would fall on
well, that's-
the district. Sorry to keep passing that off. Yep.
I think this would also be the district, but about finding out as far as, once we get those numbers that we were talking
The
about
attrition
for
to-
7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, why are people going elsewhere? I
So-
could see a lot of different reasons. It might vary family to family. If when people move out of the district to go to private school, if they're asked that question, I would be curious to have that information. But
Yeah,
again,
and
that might be for the.
there is some attrition at the upper grades for children going to private schools and stuff like that. But what I would say is, still talk to Dr. Fish. Even with the attrition that you see of these kids going there, he's still overloaded. So I'm very happy some of these kids are going there. In regards to BC High, I was also Catholic Conference. I'm not a fan of them, so I don't call it a good school.
I'm not going to agree with you on that.
That's fine.
And then my final part of my question was about just each elementary school, and that might be something that we have to ask the principals, but
So
you just kind of talked about them as one, and I'm just curious if there are more that are burdened than others.
They essentially are all burdened. So, you know, one of the things I'll try to do for, you know, I mean, tonight's kind of an informational thing. I think once we go live, once a warrant article's out there, they'll be much more deep. And I appreciate all the questions, and I'll try to get answers to all of them. But essentially what I'm trying to do is get the floor plans. We have the floor plans for what the buildings were built for. They're color-coded them so we know what classrooms, what our music rooms, what our libraries. And what I've been working with the principals now is to look at how these are being utilized today and what spaces have been cannibalized. You know, we've got preschool, so a preschool room or a kindergarten classroom is basically a 1,200 square foot classroom with an integral bathroom and toilet. Because you don't want these kids, tiny little kids, going out mixing with the larger kids. There's a number of preschool rooms and kindergarten rooms that had to go into regular classrooms that don't have integral toilets. So now what they have to do is on that corner of the wing, they have to take over that bathroom for preschool and basically make the other kids go to the other directions of the school. So one of the things I know has been talked about of eliminating the preschool component for what we have as a program. The problem with that is if you're comparing like apples to apples programmatically, you got to look at taking the options that you get in a preschool here and retrofitting the buildings to integrate those bathrooms into it and basically look at the cost comparison to that. That was what I presented to the school committee last week. So in my next presentation, I'll try to give floor plans to each one so you can kind of see each one laid out.
But Liz, save those questions, the busing, like all those are very good questions, so I appreciate it. Allison?
I have a few. So my question is, if there are any costs to renovate the other schools, because when we talk about equity amongst the town and the schools, we'll have to renovate the other schools in order to make them comparable to the new shiny building that not necessarily everybody will go through. So I'm just curious if there are any plans to renovate the other, is there any cost for that?
Everyone will go through.
Well, no, like not necessarily if they leave to go to private, 7th and 8th. So the question is, well, let's just
The kids
say,
at the elementary schools will all that stay in the Milton Public Schools will all
I know, but there's one building that will be brand new, and the other ones now are on a 20-year, they need to be updated, and
Correct.
so do we have any cost for renovating?
That's not part of what we're dealing with right now. So our deal, what we're trying to do right now is create more space to alleviate overcrowding. Renovation of the schools, the existing schools, is not something we're looking at right now.
Next question then is, if the goal is to alleviate the space, why is short-term space, like that gentleman that is from Milton ever approached Matt Sullivan to add maybe modulars, or which they are building in Vermont that are permanent, or anything to help with the short term? Like, why are we waiting for the town to vote in order to create a plan B? Or even to address besides the Cunningham fourth floor?
So we've looked at temporary solutions as part of that space needs study of adding on to the buildings. The problem with adding on to the buildings is there are common spaces, and I've said this in multiple meetings, that are shared throughout the buildings, specifically the cafeterias, right? The cafeterias, kids are eating at 10:30 in the morning for lunch, and then they have to go the remainder of the day.
Well, they have snack.
If I may.
No, I know, but they're not going, because that's an inaccurate statement. They're eating at 10:30. My son eats at 10:30.
Yep.
And he is not, just for the record, has never complained about eating at 10:30, but they have snack at 1:30. So they're not going the rest of the day. I don't like, I just don't,
Okay.
I want to make sure that that's out
Okay.
there.
But the point that I'm going with it is, if we start adding on to spaces, the only spaces to add on to the schools are the playgrounds, right? Think of Collycott, Cunningham. Is there any open space there to add on modularly? No, it's the playground space. So we'd be taking over the playground space, reducing that right now. Right now, there isn't even enough space. There's 1,300 kids between Collycott and Cunningham schools that utilize those two playgrounds, and then those would go away for these spaces. And then by adding all that space on, we would now be running breakfast or lunch at 10 a.m., maybe even earlier, because we've got those spaces. The library, you're talking about increasing the density of kids in spaces that it's not meant to be. The other part that goes in too, that they're starting to realize that the Cunningham fourth floor addition, is there are a number of code things that it starts triggering. We're putting more occupants into buildings. That's going to tax the HVAC system. We're going to have to look at plumbing systems associated with that based on new occupancy counts. So these are all things that we had looked at 3 or 4 years ago as we did school building committee and updated multiple committees over those years of why adding on to the buildings didn't work. And
So we couldn't add on the fourth floor, and that could be done.
We're not adding on, it's a renovation.
Well, yeah, but we also said it wasn't usable.
I never said that.
Well, it was, and Glover wasn't an addition. Like when they did that space study, they showed that you could add.
They looked at Glover, they put spaces on the backside of it. It didn't add up to the 26 classrooms that we need.
Well,
so.
I don't know if that's necessarily, we'll have to go through, because I have actually heard that we don't need 26 classrooms. And just so we're very clear, we don't have, in Glover right now, they went back into a music room and art room.
Correct.
Correct. Okay, just because we said that they were all on cards when we first started. I just want to make sure that we're getting accurate information out to the public, because that's so important.
Yep.
And so that's why I just want to make sure, because when we talk about investing in our kids, like we really need to make sure that, when we talk about, does it mean investing in a new building, or does it mean investing in more teachers that would help get these kids that are behind? Because the numbers aren't changing for our kids educationally. And so I'm just curious if new building changes the kids educationally, or does investing in more teachers and us, looking at space, and putting more teachers in those classrooms changes, because I think that's one of those things that we need to address long term. And I think that's pretty much what I have.
Okay, just to respond, I think what you were saying, the questioning of the 26 classrooms is probably the enrollment study that some citizens did a couple months ago. I presented my analysis of that to confirm we still need 26 classrooms. Their analysis was based on flawed data that would take us back to 2018, not to what the schools were built for. So if that's what you're referencing, I'd ask you.
I want to make sure that if you could provide the classrooms and how many, because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen how, because my son has 19, and some of my friends have kids in the middle school that have less than 19. So I would love to see a classroom by classroom breakdown, so we can see how many kids are in these classrooms in this space, because I think building you know, another, when we could possibly add, you know, does this have fields for our kids for attached to the school? Is there any soccer fields? Anything for
No,
space?
they're not.
So
That's part of the nice thing of having it on the campus with the high school. You leverage the existing fields. that are
How?
there.
They're bursting at the seams there. There's no space for them to have practice after
Yep.
school. I would love to see the schedule then, that would be created, that if that's possible.
Thought I got it.
If you could provide that, that would be great too. If like, what would be the after school, how would they use the space for the fields? Because like my daughter's practicing on the high school baseball field at 6:30 at night.
Yep.
So that would be great, thanks.
Ron, I got you, Jay.
Okay, I've got construction questions.
Bring it.
Two only for now. We'll see if it circles back to me. The slide with the numbers, there was a line that said overhead/profit. I've got questions about it.
Go for
Can
it.
you speak to that?
I'll do my
what is
best.
that?
So, go to that slide. No one's allowed to make a profit.
What's the question, Jay?
It's supposed to have no.
Well, there was a line that said overhead/profit, and I didn't know what that meant.
Yeah.
Their profit.
It's the gift that keeps on giving.
Let's get to that slide. Apologies. Cost. Not the escalation.
Where was it?
No, I got it right here.
Oh, there you
This one, construction cost.
Yeah.
So what happens is when you look at, actually, it's on there. So in the cost estimate that we had here, they give out kind of costs per square foot costs that are here.
Okay.
Other trade costs that are all the way down. And then at the bottom, they utilize a overhead and profit. I think it's 3% of that overall construction cost.
Who's profit?
Is that general conditions?
Contractor, yep.
Okay.
So it's a contractor cost, essentially.
Yeah, it's kind of lumped into the overall construction cost that you see there.
But then on the next slide, we have a 30% soft cost. I would think that would have covered.
That's soft cost to designers, architects, engineers.
Okay.
So along with, in their fees that are associated with the architect and the engineers, they have overhead and profit built into theirs, but it's not a separate line item, it's there.
Okay, so this is like,
Oh, so that it's overhead and profit is separate from general conditions.
Correct.
So now I am lost.
Correct. So I can dive in further, but the cost estimator to look into that. But what I was trying to do is just basically break out the line items that he had there.
okay, all right. I don't fully understand, but I'll table that.
But essentially, general conditions is different than overhead and profit too.
Okay. My next question, and keep in mind, I know nothing about construction.
Sure.
But when you said, and I know you're getting it from every side, and people are saying cut costs.
It's all good.
But when you said we looked at 8 teams and then we cut it down to 7 teams, to me that seems like you're already building a foundation. You're building a gym. You're building a cafeteria. You're bringing in plumbing. You're building electricity. That 8th team is just okay, except for the science classroom. That 8th team is just 4 rooms that have 4 walls and a ceiling. Sounds pretty inexpensive to me once you're already building the school, and cutting off that 8th team seems not very sensible, even if it might save us. It seems like it would save us only a few dollars. So can you respond to that?
Yeah, so I don't know the exact square footage to that, but essentially we'd be going above 152,000. So if you're supporting a higher number than 173 million, I'd welcome that. Because essentially, even though it seems like a little bit of an additive cost, when we put that in there, our cost, if you saw from the graph, is about $877 a square foot. That's construction cost.
Okay.
Programmatically, it's about $1,000 a square foot once you add in all the soft costs to there. So it could end up being a couple $1 million to do those spaces.
But again, I know we can say a certain dollars per square foot, but as a person who doesn't know anything about construction, not every square foot is considered equal. You know, building the gym is more expensive. Building the cafeteria is more expensive. Building an English classroom has got to be less per square foot than building a cafeteria, I would think.
Correct. So this decision to reduce from 8 teams to 7 teams was actually one made by the district, not by school building committee.
Oh, okay.
So
That
yeah,
reassures me.
Yeah, it wasn't something that we came in and said, hey, we're cutting this, don't worry about you guys. We present, each one of these revisions that we've done here had input from the district. The district are the ones that made the decision, not us.
That reassures me.
Yeah, so we wanted to make sure with Dr. Fish, when we met with him, Principal Fish, would this work for you for what you're doing? So
Okay.
one of the things we did too is our enrollment number that we're capturing here is a little bit higher than what the current enrollment is. And the reason for that is we know, as we experienced with the last building project, why we're here today, is if you build it, they will come. So the anticipation is we set the number a little bit higher to give a little bit of flexibility. And because that number was a little bit higher, we also felt we could reduce that classroom size down to 7 teams.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Okay, so we have left Judy, Brian, then you, Ron. So Judy? Judy's hands down?
Yep.
I'll give her okay, Judy, if you want to talk, we'll go back to you, Brian.
Sure. I actually have 4 questions.
Sure.
Is it going to be HVAC?
Yes.
In these schools?
Geothermal heat pump HVAC.
Okay. You said having 2 buildings is going to be cheaper than having 1 total because of the construction materials? I don't, how can you explain that?
Yes, so the overall larger building is most likely a CMU exterior, steel framing and stuff like that. The smaller building, because it's smaller, we were thinking maybe timber framing. So by doing a different type of framing for it, we could get some
It's a smaller
savings
building,
out of it.
so you wouldn't do that for.
And
you
the
couldn't do timber.
HVAC for the smaller building is actually derived from the larger building. So we have a central plant in the larger building that feeds over to the smaller building. So it's not 2 separate HVAC systems either.
Okay. I was thinking of modular classrooms too. I looked at that, into that, and they're significantly cheaper. And a lot of towns do use them because they have varying, populations go up, they go down, they go up, they go down. How about Glover? Is that not an option? I thought they had space.
So we looked at 2019, we looked at space needs study. They looked at adding classrooms onto Glover. There were 2 options presented, one at the front of the building, one at the rear of the building. The rear of the building, I think when they did it, didn't take into account the environmental impacts of being near Turner's Pond. The certain setbacks, you have to be beyond that. So I think that was a flaw for what they did as part of that. And I learned this from going through all the Conservation Commission meetings that we did as part of the land swap. But again, adding on to those spaces doesn't address the overall need that we have for a town. Again, it adds space to a building. It stresses the common spaces that are there for cafeteria spaces and everything else. So,
Well, that's the thing. The population actually has been static for like 6 years in the school system here.
I'll go back to the slide.
Yeah. And
Gone down.
it's gone down from 5 years ago.
The biggest class was like 2013, I think it was.
Right. But it's been, if you go back, 6 years actually. Go back to.
So this is 2015. This is 2014. So this is a 10-year mark. The key thing, though, like I said, even though it has gone down, that's afforded us some space, which kind of allows us, as you mentioned, is to recoup art and music rooms at one of the schools. But the reality is there's no room for error. And to assume the population is going to keep going down, I asked you to look at the permitted 40B and other developments going on in the town. I gave a presentation to school committee last week that using the metrics that the planning board's consultant did for MBTA zoning shows there's probably going to be an additional 108 kids, I think it is, and I can share that with everybody for what I did. I didn't want to get too deep as part of my presentation. So the other part that comes in is 2 years ago at Cunningham, there was a pipe burst in one of the rooms in a kindergarten. They had to. It took out 2 floors. It happened on the upper floor. It took out the floor below. They had to relocate 2 spaces over the course of a weekend. There was no space to put them. So where did they put them? In the middle of the library, and then they put the other ones into a teacher's room. When they put them in the teacher's room, that's what forced the teachers to go on the back of the stage. So the reality is that there's essentially no room for error in any of the spaces, any of the buildings right now. So assuming the population is going to go down.
But that's kind of an unusual thing.
I'd ask you to look at census data for the town. The census data has shown the town's population has dramatically spiked over the past 10 years. You know, we're at roughly 28,000, and this is on the presentation I did when we did the land swap. The amount of growth we've experienced in the past 10 years is greater than what we've experienced the previous 30 before that. So I can send that slide to you if you want to see. But essentially, with the real estate developments going on, the number of 3-bedroom units that are in these developments coming in, like we're talking roughly about 108 kids more, and that's based on a consultant hired by the town, their metrics that I just used, what they had, and laid it out against, you know, the developments that are going on now.
Well, this all blows up if the MBTA thing goes through too.
The MBTA one's different. So, and
I mean, the kids, there'll be that many more kids in the school.
Well, the MBTA one's different because the student yield on that type of development deals mainly with 1- and 2-bedroom units that don't yield a lot of the kids. So if you look at their analysis, the student yield from 1- and 2-bedroom apartments is like 0. 3 bedrooms is where it pops in.
265 is the number.
What's up?
They estimated 265.
Over a 20-year period, full build-out. So you assume that it's 10 kids a year over 265 divided by 20.
If it's over 20 years, that's another question.
Yeah,
I mean, off track, but if it was done that. But
you would agree then if that passes, more kids are coming into town.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the margin that you have, what I'm trying to say is the point is the population has been pretty static for like 6 years if you look back.
Still a full class, still about 400 kids above capacity. So it hasn't been static and we've been below capacity. We're above capacity for the past 12 years.
We also did do the 4th floor. Like we could have done some short term, like we didn't do the 4th floor. We could have added on to Glover. We've now wasted 5+ years and we're still not wasted in the sense, but like we have a new school, but like we also could have made some short term, like we could do stuff now to address the needs.
And I wonder if you did modular classrooms, if you could get them in some of the schools, if that would have helped also. I guess that's good.
Ron?
Hi. I guess Sean first. Hey, I think really appreciate you coming in and really appreciate all the work that your committee does. Earlier in our Warrant Committee meeting here, we were talking about how sometimes we're underappreciated. I think your committee also could be suffering from that. I think, you guys are probably overworked, underpaid for this public service. So I just wanted to take a moment to, express my appreciation for all that work that you guys on your team do. The question I had was really more just to hear your thoughts. What is the one biggest risk that you see right now in terms of delivering this plan?
Biggest risk is timeline. So the reality is this project isn't going to go away, even if you add a couple classrooms on. I think you're going to start seeing more increase. Like I said, the rough numbers right now is just 108 kids, just based on the stuff that's. So when we got interviewed by MSBA, I'm sure questions will come up regarding MSBA too. They asked about future growth of what's going on in the town, specifically MBTA zoning or any 40B projects. So town administrator put a list of projects that were there that are in construction, either been completed or on the horizon. And when you lay out the units that they have for that, again, against the metrics that were there, it's going to be 108 more kids. So that graph you see in there is going to start spiking back up again pretty soon. And couple that with the large kindergarten class sizes that are there now. As Liz mentioned, there's no room in the kindergartens at Collycott or Cunningham anymore, that if any kids get accepted to there, they're all at 24 kids. And if anybody's seen ever had a birthday party with 15 kids at it? Imagine 24 stuck in a classroom. It's I don't know how the teachers do it. But the reality is the point, Ron, is, the need for this project isn't going away. The longer we sit on it, the more it's going to cost. So we were just doing an exercise prior to this with School Building Committee, looking at whether we go with MSBA or whether we go on our own and just kind of continue down the path. When you start looking at escalation costs on a $173 million project, the longer we keep punting it, the more expensive it's going to be really quick. So
time is of the essence, right?
Correct.
Like everything. And my understanding is the town voted to support this new facility, right? So I think some of the questions that are questioning why are we doing this, maybe that's not going to get us to help your work as much. What can this committee do as a warrant committee to help your committee?
I mean, for the most part, this committee's job, as far as I see it, is pressure testing. So I welcome all the comments, all the inquiries and stuff like that. Feel free to email me at any time, just to kind of prep, so I don't hit you flat-footed and I'm prepared. But essentially for this committee, pressure test it, because at some point, it goes in front of the public. And I think if this was just a committee that nodded and said yes to everything, the public wouldn't feel as confident when they're voting on this. That there's committees like this in town that do their work of pressure testing things. So more questions, more inquiries, bring it.
Tom, I have a question.
Absolutely, and then
hopefully it's a relatively easy question. How does this town and other towns look at ROI on the investment? I mean, it's great that we're benchmarking against other towns on a dollars per square foot basis, but really, what is the goal on the return? I mean, obviously, we want to improve education. We're going to stipulate that we need more space, but the question is, are we making this investment? I mean, do we want to perpetually build it and they will come, or does it have some sort of material impact in terms of real estate tax dollars or property values, or I mean, really, what are the pieces that help us decide whether it's $10 a square foot or $100 a square foot that we want to invest in a space? So how do we titrate that?
Yeah, so the amount, it's tough because we can't say what we want to invest for an amount, right? For dollars per square foot.
But what are you driving? We're making this investment, or some investment, and the question is, for what return?
Yep. So I appreciate you calling it an investment, because that's how I look at it. Mm-hmm. Some people look at it as an expense, $173 million. This is building an educational facility that's going to house the middle school, I think 685 kids, and the preschool's 140 or something like that. It's going to be around for 50 to 75 years. So calculate the number of kids that are going to flow through the school over that time period and the type of educational experience they're going to get out of this. From a selfish component, for people that own real estate, I asked you to look at what houses were worth in 2008, and then after the schools were done, kind of what that project did for the town. The reality is we're realizing now is that project made this town extremely attractive to people, and it brought a lot of people to the town, which we see in this graph, and they brought their kids with them. So my take on it is, by introducing a new educational facility that's going to be state of the art, very spectacular, I think it's a great thing for the town. I think you'll realize recouping that really quick. One of the ones I worked on early in my career is Central Artery Tunnel. People freaked out at $14 billion, back when it was being done. You look at how it's transformed the city right now. You go to the North End. If you went to the North End back in the 80s and you go to the North End now, it is complete night and day. The entire city is different. For me, infrastructure projects I always look at as investments, not really as expenses.
Can I comment on that though? Like, if we're talking about investing in the schools, so doesn't it require us to invest in this education? Like, we can invest in a building, but we also have to invest in the education, which requires more specialty teachers, more interventionists. Like, I'm just a big advocate of, because our kids are still behind, and if you've seen the test scores that just came out, our kids from COVID are still suffering. So like when we talk about investing in, we really need to look at the override and investing in that first and foremost, because we can build a shiny new building, and I'm not saying I'm for or against, but we need to invest in the kids' education first and foremost. That's investing more importantly with the kids struggling still. We had to get a 4th grade interventionist. We're gonna need a 5th grade, and I mean, we're still very far behind. And so I just want to throw that investment in not just the building, but also in the education.
So one thing to comment on that is I'm all for it. So one of the terms that was thrown around a couple of years ago is educational excellence. And when you couple overcrowded schools with low expenditures per pupil, there's no way it's educational excellence. They both go together. So I'm full support of an override to fund the teachers and everything, but you can do the override, but when class sizes start going to 30 kids and stuff like that, I'm not sure how much more money you'll have to throw at it for additional interventionists and stuff like that. That's something that I would ask you to ask the superintendent when he comes. That's more me speaking as a parent right now, not school building committee. But I mean, that's the trending that you're seeing now. Class sizes just getting much larger.
I just have one final question. So I'm glad you ended on the point of class size. So my daughter started in Cunningham in 2009. She's now a senior in college. And at the time, and my son was 4 years before her, so he was in the middle of building all the schools. So he went from the 1909 building to Glover, and then finally to Cunningham. And at the time, so I don't think my son had a crowding issue, but my daughter definitely did. So as you were mentioning the class size of kindergarten, I'm going through her class picture, all of whom I still remember, know, and keep in contact with. She had 23 kids in her kindergarten class. And then they had to add an extra French immersion to Cunningham because my son had just a single strand French immersion. She had 2 classes because, so how is it different now than it was in 2009? I mean, overcrowding seems to be a perpetual issue with, I don't think just Milton, but a lot of towns. All towns. Maybe with the exception of Weston, because that's a different town itself. So I'm just wondering, how is it different? Why is there this compelling need now to build, this upper middle school?
Yeah, my take on it, just from like the research or just diving in, the special ed components now that probably weren't there when your children were there. There's legal requirements for class sizes that they have to do. So, for example, they'll have to take over a space. They'll be able to put a certain number of kids in there, and then when they hit that capacity, they have to find another space. So, as part of the kind of conversions or the cannibalism that's gone on, you're seeing a lot more of those spaces get gobbled up by special ed, and then when they don't have that, they have to send them out of district for a very large cost. Those are ones, again, that's my interpretation of it. I would ask you to ask superintendent and stuff like that.
No, that makes sense because I'm just thinking again, like my son's 25, right? And so there was definitely a difference in terms of special education when he was going through. No, that's definitely true.
Superintendent Burrows, and he echoed that comment about special ed consuming a huge portion of the school budget.
Okay, thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, absolutely.
There's a softball coming your way. Thank you very much for the work that you do. Can you guarantee us that this will be the last school that will...
Great question.
There's all the renovations that you mentioned. Yeah, that's a huge concern too.
You don't have to build a new school because there's no space uptown.
That's a concern.
No,
there's no land.
I'll guarantee you it's the last school that I'll build. I'm not going back through this again.
The last time I debated.
Yeah, but no, to Allison's point too, like as everyone knows, to identify land was, it was very difficult to do. It took a lot to kind of get to where we are at this point. The reality is another school after this, like my joke I used to make, because I would say unless you're decking over 93, like they're doing along the pike and building buildings on top of it, that's the only way you'd be able to do it.
It does speak to where do we put the people who bring the kids? How many people can we continue to bring into the town?
Well, if we build it and they come, we won't have, we won't be able to drive through.
Can't go anywhere, you can't get to
Maybe we
school.
don't want to build it to
School, yeah.
And
That goes into the space needs that we're looking at. So the 26 classrooms that we free up at the elementary school gives some breathing room there and allows them to expand. The Pierce Middle School that houses 3 strands right now goes down to 2, gives them room to expand. As I mentioned, the school we're designing, we bumped up the enrollment a little bit, again, to assume some ability to expand in there. And then the same at the high school, moving them around there. So
You're confident that it solves the student overcrowding problem?
100%. 100%. Yeah. 100%.
99%.
No, 100%. It's
Not 110%.
No, you only go to 100. Yeah. I mean, so when we came up with the idea of the upper middle school, we had to convince the school committee at the time, and the school committee was lockstep on an elementary school. And then as they started thinking it through and digesting a little bit of seeing how things would move around, and then having an upper middle school on a campus with a high school became really attractive. It's exactly what Belmont's doing right now. They've got it under construction and ready to open. That's where they've came around to it, instead of realizing they called it elegant. So it was, it was a really good thing that came out of our committee, through probably 3 or 4 years of work.
And my biggest concern is we're creating capacity, doesn't give us flexibility to contract, and you're also, by fragmenting schools into the smaller groupings, inherently you're adding overhead,
Yes.
overlapping overhead.
It's true.
And so if we had carte blanche, I'd look at it very, very differently and plan to create space just like office buildings today that are as flexible as possible for today's use as opposed to 5, 10 years down the road. And what we're doing is, in my mind, quite the opposite. And I know we're constrained by the land that we have, but it just makes it that much more critical that we figure out the right dollar number and whether or not it is the appropriate use of resources, and that we're not, that we've exhausted every other means. And I'm not proposing this, but I mean, throwing stuff in the refrigerator, I mean, like, should we offer vouchers to go to parochial schools or private schools, or tax incentives, or 173 million in my mind buys a lot of that without committing us to long-term debt. And like I said, that's not what I'm suggesting. I'm just saying that I have serious reservations because it's just such a long-term commitment.
There's so many other things that need to be done.
Lori Conley.
So I have a couple of broader questions and a couple of more detailed questions, which may actually get into programming, so you might have to divert me. Tell me about the pre-K. How many pre-K classrooms do we have today? And I think are you going to give us the classrooms in all the schools that we have today, or are we getting that?
I'm going to try to do that.
Okay.
Yeah.
So in the pre-K, aren't there like 6? That was kind of the number 8. And
all mandatory?
Yeah, so the
it's the integrated preschool.
I believe so.
There's one that's not mandatory.
I think that's the full day one at Tucker.
Yeah, just so we're on the same, I just heard that in the last meeting from the school committee.
That there's one
Not mandatory.
Oh, and that's at Tucker.
It could
I think it
be.
is. I think it is.
I believe it's the full day at Tucker.
That's right.
Again,
But they still have,
Full day. But in the building that you're proposing to build, there's how many classrooms?
9.
Just 9, okay.
Yep.
So it's the same amount.
Same plus 1.
Okay. And and that's 140 kids?
Roughly. I'm going round numbers off the top of my
Okay.
head. And they run half-day programs, so there's a
Right.
morning and an afternoon. So if you're
So-
taking the number of kids dividing the classrooms, just keep that account.
Yep, I remember that. So we're putting another auditorium in. How do you have your middle school theater program in 2 places now? When the middle school theater program right now is phenomenal. I mean, I go to the shows, my kids are out of college.
Yep.
But how does that, and again, this could be programming, like it just seems like you need one place for the theater program, not 2 places.
Yeah, so if I could pick it up out of Pierce and move it over to ours and not cause and save all that money, I would. But the reality was, once we introduced an upper middle school and kids were going from a school that had an auditorium to a school that didn't, it didn't make sense. And that was part of the visioning stuff that the district let into us, that they needed that auditorium to kind of expand that. So how the theater program will work out between the 2 schools, I don't know. But the need for that auditorium kind of came out of that visioning sessions that we had. And that was input from the district.
Okay. So I'm also looking at some other fancy spaces, it would appear to me.
Sure.
The cardio and yoga room. Are there any yoga rooms in any of the other schools?
I believe they have, so at the high school, they had a cardio space there for treadmills and stuff like that. So
That's for the athletics, yeah.
yeah,
Department.
yeah.
Yeah,
So
that's-
again, part of this came in from the visioning sessions that were there, that were requests from the gym teacher.
Going back to middle school.
Okay.
And I can pull up the detailed plans if you want me to kind of zoom into anything.
Well, no, it
Because I know
it just seems like we're now in the 7th and 8th grade, we're going to have a nice yoga room.
And the piano
Fancy,
bar.
and the piano bar.
Oh, yeah, the piano
The
bar.
piano
We need
lab.
pianos.
And yet then you go get promoted and you go to the high school and you don't have it all.
You're going to have to renovate that.
You know what I mean? And so again, that might be more programming.
Sure.
And then the music rooms, there seems like a lot of music here in this space. Is that consistent with what's at Pierce?
Yeah, so again, all the space needs that came out of the
Visioning,
visioning, that kind
all right.
of came from the district. So for us, for school building committee, we're just trying to implement what they asked.
Okay. Is this building, or both of these buildings, under the new energy code that we just voted in last year?
Correct, the opt-in energy code. Yep.
And do you have an additional cost of what that is costing us versus what it would have cost? Is there any way to?
I don't, but the big thing on the costs, I can just say this from, like, my background is
Yeah.
engineering and stuff. The stretch energy code, when we adopted that, was the one that caused a lot of price inflation, because that was the one, when the town adopted that had the most cost impact. This opt-in energy code that we're doing now that basically says, if you're putting fossil fuel in, you have to make it also for electric. And then by the time you do that, you just make it all electric. That cost is much less than what that initial, when we adopted the stretch. So the opt-in code that's there, I can talk to the consultants to find out what that added cost would be. But in regards to going from, a baseline of stretch to an opt-in, it's not going to be that much.
Okay. And then what about, I know a number of people that have heat pumps.
Yep.
In cold areas, and then they need to supplement their heat. Will we have a supplementation to the heat pumps in here, or do you think the heat pumps, when it gets to be 0 degrees outside, will be?
So
Geothermal is different than air source.
You're talking air source heat pumps, not geothermal heat pumps.
Okay,
An air source heat pump basically would utilize the heat in the air.
Yeah.
The geothermal is digging down into subterranean structures and pulling heat from there.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, I think no, I had one more question. In your fancy designs. Everybody gets 4. In your pictures in here, it looked like exterior, and this could be visioning and it could just be a wish list. It looks like there's an amphitheater?
No, so if you want, I can pull up the exterior just to show, but it's not an amphitheater, so what it is,
It says it is.
yeah, let me stop share.
just look like one? Yeah. And it says it.
Yeah.
Multi-use plaza, amphitheater.
Oh, I like the picture of Ron better up on the screen. There you go.
So let me just share
Can't see there.
this. I don't know if this is the
There's
one.
another one.
'Cause I'm not sure.
Oh, look. That's quite all right.
This the one that you were looking at?
That's right there, see? Is that outdoor space for us?
No, that's not the one.
Well, let me just walk you through kind of updates. So this is one of them. So what happens is between the building, the middle school building that's up here and the preschool building that's down here, there is a plaza that's going to be out here. Now, the area when you're on grade down here to where Brooks Field is probably about a 12-foot differential. So you have essentially a retaining wall that was going down here. And one of the concepts that the landscape architect was originally looking at was putting seating there, essentially for an outdoor space. So it's not like a Red Rocks amphitheater or anything like that. It's basically just...
Or the one we're putting in down at the wharf?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All right. But essentially what it is, it was space because we had a grade differential that was there and try to utilize
something.
that somehow.
Got it. All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Anybody have any more questions for Sean?
I'm back on the screen, thank you.
He's coming back, right, Sean?
Oh, yeah, of course he will. Like I said,
10 minutes, I'm just going out.
no, so again, Sean, I so much appreciate it. And I know there were a lot of questions.
Yep.
As you can see, there's a ton of interest
Figured.
in the committee and everywhere else about this. So Sean will be back. And as he indicated, as plans go forward, other committees make decisions on where we're going, Sean will be back and we can probably, maybe with someone else, to maybe drill down on some of these, vision issues versus construction issues, and we can discuss those. So, Sean, I really appreciate everything.
Thank you again.
And thank you for being so flexible with your schedule to accommodate us.
No, I appreciate the audience. And like I said, just if you have questions, let me know. I'll happily come back.
We will. And Sean's sincere when he says that he will respond promptly with the information you're looking for. So, Sean, thanks again.
Thank you.
Do you have a town email now?
Yeah. I've had it for since Nick took over, he put one in for me. So if you go to the school building committee website, it's svc@townofmilton.org. One of the things on the website too, it has the cost impact data for the 173 million, so people can actually see what the tax impact is for their properties on there too.
Okay.
I know that was a hot issue that people were looking
Yeah.
for, so we've got all that on there too.
All right, so you get these, they go directly to you.
Right on here.
Just checking.
And for those of you who haven't, I know you all have, the town website is a wealth of information, not only for Sean's group, but a lot of the other things that we've talked about and we're going to talk about. So, explore on the website, and I'm sure you'll find some good bits of information you can use in the future. Sean, thank you very much.
Thank you, Sean.
Sorry, I know everybody wants to go. Can I be recognized?
Yes, Jay, you may be recognized.
Okay. This might work out sort of well that I'm speaking at the end of the night, because what I'm going to talk about is something that maybe everyone can take home and think about and mull over. So when we were talking earlier around the table about how we can be the financial advisors to, call it the town, call it the select board, call it whatever you want, you couldn't have set me up more perfectly. I'm going to share my screen if that's okay. I sent Tom a file. I'm not going to share my screen.
Okay.
Am I sharing my screen, Karen? Oh, hold on. I need to click. Okay.
And I sent this out.
Yeah.
Late this afternoon.
All those numbers?
Yeah, well, we're gonna get a little
patience.
Just making sure I have the right file.
So, what this is, and it's sort of the beginning of a discussion. This is not Jay saying this is how it is. if we're talking about being an advisor to the town, be it the people, be it the select board, be it whatever, I wanted to sort of start collecting some information that we can use to share. And so what I did, you all got an Excel file, and it's got 4 groups of tabs. Now, you can't see the color at the bottom, but just trust me, there are green tabs, and these are the ugly ones that you're looking at here, and they all have a link to a website of the state where I got the information from, and they've just got the data here dumped. Okay, here's various information that I think might be interesting. Like, I looked at 23 peer communities. They were the peer communities that the Town Government Study Committee looked at a couple years ago. And I said, okay, here's, for example, what we're looking at now is how much do they get from residential, commercial, and industrial taxes? That might be interesting. And then, okay, again, trust me on the colors here. I'm going over to a group of red tabs that are a little bit prettier. And there where I take that raw data and I put it into something a little more useful. A little bit of a table that you can look at and see, okay, I can tell what's going on. And then I have a bunch of orange tabs that say, okay, all right, now Jay is putting things into a graph, and I'm saying, okay, here's the numbers you're looking at, and here's the graph. And I really want to emphasize that this is not me saying, these are the final sets of graphs, and that's what's interesting. This is me saying, here's a start. Here's some numbers that I want the other 14 members of the Warrant Committee to look at and think to yourself, what would be interesting to look at when it comes to what's the financial situation of this town? And right now, certainly what Tom sent you is all current, not even current. Most of the numbers are about a year old, but let's call them current and recent past numbers for us, for our peer communities. And like I have, okay, here's what's the debt service per resident for us versus our peer communities. Maybe you want to see a graph about police spending per resident. Okay, I don't have that graph. What would be interesting to you? So I apologize. I know it's late at night, so I'm trying not to rush, but I'm trying to give you the building blocks that we can all use to say what would be useful to the town to see. And then if you go to the far left, you have the prettiest things, which are just the graphs, and I did my best to make good-looking graphs. Okay, per pupil spending, we got a lot about that. I really had fun with that. Debt service per resident, culture and recreation spending per resident, why not? Our average taxes compared to our peers, okay, they're a little lower. This graph I won't go on about, but I really like it. It compares how much you get from residential as opposed to commercial industrial taxes versus how big the average tax is. And you can see, as far as average tax we pay in our town, we're comparable to our peers, even though we don't have commercial industrial supporting our tax base. We still don't have higher than average residential taxes.
We're better run, right?
Well, hopefully, presumably. I think also it costs money to have commercial industrial in your town. I don't know. What am I? I'm not an expert. So I think maybe we can all go away with that, maybe even talk in groups of 1 or 2, not violating the open meeting law, saying, okay, what can we put together to really be a financial advisor to this town? Now, one thing that's not in the thing that I sent to Tom, but is relevant to the discussion that we were having about an hour ago, is I did a few more tabs this weekend looking at, okay, the real question, okay, I laid out where do things stand now, but what everybody wants to know is where are things going to stand? Now let's say we're going to have an override. I made up a number, $5 million. That is not the override number. It's just a placeholder. Let's say we have a $5 million override next year. Then you can see, the average household taxes. I'm looking down here at the bottom. Yeah, they bump up quite a bit in FY26, and then they're pretty low. But then, and we can change this no to a yes. What if we have a school? And I have some assumptions. I assume we can get a bond at 3.75%. It's a 30-year flat bond. Well, then what happens? Well, then you look down at the bottom and you see, okay, FY27, 28, 29, I'm assuming the school is being constructed right then. And then we take out the bond in FY30, and so the taxes jump by 6.6%. I realize this is just sort of a high-level thing. I'll send it out to a lot of you, or I'll send it out to the group. I don't know how user-friendly it is, but this also comes into, what I was hearing an hour and a half ago is we've also got to have an animal shelter. I've got the bond that we just issued that might cover 2 fire stations. What if we have a 3rd fire station bond? Can we add that? We can add that to this tool. So this, if, for example, maybe the select board is going to be wondering this year, should we have an override? And I don't think it's reasonable to talk about should we have an override and how would it affect people this year without thinking about, and if there's a new school, which there may or may not be, how would both of these affect people? So, this is putting those two together. How would an override and a new school affect people? We think there's going to be an animal shelter. We can put that in here too. So I'm speaking sort of fast because I know it's the end of the night. I'm open to questions now. I'm open to questions one-on-one, email, call later.
I have a quick question.
Sure.
Where did I don't mean to prolong this, but where did that list of towns come from?
I'll tell you. It came from a couple of years ago. The Town Government Study Committee talked to us about, I think it was when we were deciding to elect or appoint our treasurer. And they said, here are some peer communities to look at. And what I like about that list is that I didn't make it up. The main thing I like about the list is I didn't look at, here's this other town that looks worse than us, and this other town looks worse than us. I'll make a list of those.
Well, it's different from the list that Tom sent around today on the school building.
Yeah,
that was a different list, and I was wondering about that list because it had a town like it had Sudbury in it. It was trying to say we have low taxes, but it had like Sudbury in it, but it didn't have Randolph. It had like Lexington, but it didn't have Braintree, and it seemed to be like they bounced around, but I don't know.
Yeah, I will say one limitation of this list, since we were looking at, I think it's only towns and not cities, I think. But it is also because it's a diverse mix of some have low commercial and some have not very much commercial, some have quite a bit of commercial. And maybe you'd rather only look at things with low commercial. Maybe you think they're a better comparison to us, but I sort of like, looking at both.
Yeah, Liz?
So I think this is really helpful because I too didn't really like at town meeting sort of some of the discussions surrounding the warrant committee, kind of what you were getting at earlier, Allison, about not recognizing the amount of work that the warrant committee puts in. And as a person who wanted to be on the warrant committee and finally is, I really think that doing this and having this level of detail so that when people get up and get up and get up and get up again and again and say where is your proof, warrant committee? It's here's factual data that nobody made up, and we can add any town in the world, in Massachusetts, that people want to add, and to be able to answer those questions, because some of what I saw was the warrant committee really did have a lot of answers to the questions that were brought up at town meeting, and I thought that was really helpful. So if we were able to kind of predict and, as we sort of go through, predict what some of the questions are going to be and the questions that we have, and as we're talking to people, to be able to have data to answer it right then and there, I think would be helpful. And further to that point, so as not to make Jay's life miserable, adding whatever towns and volunteering myself to be helpful to him in whatever way if other people want to add questions that they have, so he doesn't have to stay up late at night making charts all over. But I don't think my graphs,
I would hate that.
I don't think my graphs will be as beautiful, but I will help him input the data.
Jay loves making charts.
I know, and I do too. I'm such a I love Excel. I can't help it.
So I'm going to prolong. I'd just like to say, Jay.
Yeah.
This is an awesome document.
Okay.
Okay. I really appreciate it. It really is powerful, and I think it puts you in that mindset of when you're approaching whatever your thing is. Hey, what are the other cities and towns doing? And I know it did come up big time on the treasurer thing. Right?
Okay.
Why does Milton? How can Milton does it so cheap? How do they? You know what I mean? And these are all these towns that get together and they have meetings. like this. Like, how did you do this? How did you do that? But I really appreciate Jay doing this and putting this together. I found it fascinating today. I spent about an hour on it. I was losing track of my day. But I really appreciate Jay, and we should utilize this document list, to your point. And that really is the goal. That's why we're so diverse. That's why we're from every precinct, such different backgrounds, so we can ask those questions. Because the question that you have, 3 of your neighbors probably have too, but don't want to say it, right? Don't want to ask, or don't have the venue, really, to ask the question.
Later, I'm going to ask you your billable rate to find out how much time you wasted. 1 hour. That seems like.
Employee.
Oh, never mind. Me too. I mean, I'm not I don't bill my time either.
Wow. Okay.
So.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. Sorry. Go on.
Lori?
Oh, I thought Macy had her hand up. Can you add like an assessment increase because the assessments go up all the time?
So, as I understand it, so we have a pot of money that we need to collect, and we spread it over the town. And if everybody in town's assessments doubled tomorrow, everybody's tax bill would be the same.
Well, it can go up. It goes up 2.5%.
Yeah, I've got that in here.
But there is an assessment every 5 years, so it's going to happen again. The big jump last year was the reassessment of all the property values.
Again, if everybody's goes up the same amount, everybody's bill should be the same. If you go up faster than the rest of the town, your bill's going to go up. Is how I understand it.
But aren't you going to end up paying more? So your $11,000 number in there, when the assessment goes up 3 or 4 years out, is going to go.
That's not how I understand it.
All right,
but
let's
you're
reconvene.
You're asking a non-expert.
Let's chat about it.
Okay.
It's a good thing to bring up.
Because I think that's.
Certainly, my forecast is simplified and based on assumptions.
Oh, yeah, but if
Certainly.
you're adding in like the animal shelter, the fire station, like each component of, and now all the things on Tom's list, if we started adding in, let's renovate for $5 million every year or $10 million every year on all the school buildings so everybody gets up to, fancy piano labs and yoga rooms, then there's still going to be additional cost on top of just the school and the override.
Yeah, that's why I love that earlier conversation. Yeah. Because, I could say, well, this is just a tool to look at the cost of the override in the school. Because it is, but it's also a tool to see where we're going to be in 5 years.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah.
Yeah, that's why it's great, Jay.
I love this. Yeah, I love 15 brains are better than one brain, that's for sure. So I love hearing this conversation. And I don't know how we move towards making this some sort of product that we share with the select board, share with somebody.
Yeah, I think that might be something we should certainly talk about.
Okay. Should I switch subjects to 2 Saturdays from now?
Sure. Okay. Please mention it.
This will be even faster. There is a Massachusetts Municipal Finance Committee meeting. It's nearby. It's in Sharon. It's Saturday, the first weekend in November. What is that, second, third, something like that? I went to it 2 years ago, found it very helpful. It's a good way to spend a little more than half of a day. I looked, we can still register.
Yep.
I want to say it was $65 a person. I think the Warrant Committee covered my tab when I went 2 years ago. So, yes, the big man is not.
Jay let the cat out of the bag about our slush fund.
So I don't know if.
Everybody's gonna have to donate. GoFundMe.
So
but yes, we
are not a paid group.
I'll pay your fee to go on my behalf.
Okay. So maybe you can share more information about that with the team. Or
I will. I'll send an email tomorrow with a web link and an agenda. Jay had discussed that with Steve and I in an email previously.
You will learn the people you talk to say, yeah, I've been on my finance committee for 20 years and I'm the rookie on the committee. It's
yeah.
They don't usually turn over every 3 years, but there you go.
Okay. Well, listen, I really appreciate this meeting. If no one has any other comment, question.
Motion to adjourn?
Oh, wow. Second, Steve.
Out of here.
Aye.
And we're back next month.
Yes.
But not here.
Well, we're still on television.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're gonna have 2 meetings next week.
Okay.
Monday night, we're in the Corona Room, here. Wednesday, we have schools. It could be here. It could be at the high school. Stay tuned. I'm gonna find out Wednesday afternoon.
Thank you.
So it's a lot, but we have a lot to do. So, okay, we had a motion to adjourn.
Do you
All
need a
in
roll
favor?
call? Do you need a roll call? You need a roll call, because this
Let's go through the roll, Karen.
I think she did.
You can't keep us here.
She did though.
You can't keep us here.
Okay,
Let's start the meeting.
meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
You